Well, brother,
get over
thank you.
yourself. Yeah, man.
Thank you for doing this.
Of course, dude.
Yeah, and long overdue. We've been talking about doing this, for some time.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself. You can look at that camera or that camera.
Oh, okay. My name is Ken Foster. I'm a commercial filmmaker and videographer. And I have been on a pretty profound spiritual journey for going on 15 years now. Or actually just had my 15-year anniversary of sort of awakening. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
It's quite a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
odd when you look back on it and you go, man, it's been 15 years. That's
All right, well,
crazy.
we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And a lot of great topics I think a lot of people will be intrigued to hear.
Sure.
But let's start with the light topic.
Okay.
What is consciousness?
Oh, wow. Just gonna, light topic. Just going to jump right in.
All right.
What is all of existence? Explain that to me.
All right. Yeah.
You got the giggles.
I do this. I did this with my dad and Joe. Oh my gosh, sorry. Okay.
Well, it's a form of excitement, like laughing and like being...
It's like, you know, like when the situation is like too serious and too formal,
Yeah.
I just like bust out laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
And ironically, our school, the music theater over there, they had a concert one time where, I forgot the composer, but the whole entire piece, I kid you not, for about 20 minutes, the whole entire piece consists of the player about to hit the key, gets in the position, about to hit the key, but doesn't, and freezes for like 20 minutes. And I kid you not.
20 minutes?
Me and my sister, we were just like, what's going on? And everyone's just like,
Did he have
5
a
minutes,
seizure?
5 minutes in, like everyone's like, what's going on? What's going on? You know? And then that's the whole piece actually. And then at the end, he just gets up and then that's it. And the crowd claps. It's the most weirdest thing ever. But there is a piece like that. It's crazy.
He just like stops before he hits the
yeah.
keys.
He's like, and he freezes.
I would have wanted my money back for sure. I would have been like, I would like my refund for this dumb show.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry if it's like your friend. You're like, no, it's my best buddy.
Yeah.
It's called, I'm going to play the piano, but not. What do you want to get into first?
Okay. I do want to touch upon the consciousness and the observer, so let's go with that first.
So just talking about like what is consciousness in general?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big question, man. It's a big question because I think the answer is, the answer changes depending on what perspective you're wanting the answer to come from or where you're seeing it from. So if you're talking about like what's consciousness on a very human, physical level, it's people being awake. It's like a doctor goes, he's lost consciousness because he hit his head, you know, that form of consciousness. But if we're talking in the grand total of, you know, existence and being and on that sort of higher spiritual perspective, or from that higher spiritual perspective, man, that's hard.
It's okay.
I think that the general answer is consciousness is everything. It's all of existence. It's the blade of grass. It's the human being who's having this conversation. It's the sandwich that you're eating. You know, I kind of see it as the universe being able to, the universe's energy coming online to experience itself. You know, and I think some of these answers too are really hard to get to right away because you kind of have a sort of a foundational understanding of the paradigm that I see it through. And then once you have that, then my answer to consciousness starts to make more sense. I mean, we can go into that, but
I know, and I was just this was a little joke too. Like let's start with the light topic. Like, what is consciousness? You know, just this,
the biggest of all questions that no one knows the answer to.
But in order for the audience to also to get to this level of, you know, our plane level of thought, or even someone surpassing us, is that you have to first be a seeker, you know, and you have to understand that this world isn't just material.
Sure.
And so once a person truly understands this, it's no longer this video games that we play on the phone anymore, computer or PC or whatever. You know, that's like this man-made game, but the real game is like this reality, you know. And because this reality exists, that's why science exists, that's why religious views exist, that's why other forms of worldview exist.
Everything exists.
Everything exists essentially, And so hence the reason why we're here, you know.
Yeah.
It does get really big really fast. I get it.
Yeah, and I think with consciousness, it's the breath of existence. It's the breathing of existence. It's everything. Because you can go, well, what's consciousness? What's a human being able to perceive itself? What about animals? Okay, well, yeah, animals are conscious too. Okay, well, what about grass? Well, grass isn't conscious. It's not, because it grows. Mm-hmm. It changes in form. It needs energy from the sun. Mm-hmm. It has a relationship with its environment around it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just a different level of consciousness. And you can take this idea all the way down to the atom. Mm-hmm. You can take it down to the electron. Go, well, the electron's spinning. Mm-hmm. It has to live in its own existence according to the laws of what we perceive the laws to be of like physics and reality. So from that perspective, it's like an atom has consciousness or is consciousness. It's just on a different perspective than, say, a human, where you take a bunch of atoms and kind of collide them together, which gives the opportunity for more consciousness to sort of express through that physical being, that person. So, and I think to really answer that, we could get into what is existence. And I think we start there, and then consciousness becomes sort of
that is
an understanding, question. A better understanding of that. So
I actually do want to ask you about that question.
Yeah.
My dad and I, we recorded about the existence, and I mean, he's me on steroids, but with natural. Just I can't even imagine how the heck he got to that level, but I think it kind of makes sense why I'm the way I am, because I kind of sort of get it from my dad.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure.
And he's been my biggest mentor since I was a kid, you know.
For sure.
But let's go there.
Yeah.
What is existence? And let's get a little bit into the ontology, right? Okay. Ontology, epistemology.
Sure.
How do we understand knowledge? How do we understand what existence actually is as a what sort of being, right? And obviously we're human beings, but I'm saying like as in the sense of like some kind of a being that's, we're watching the observer itself at that level.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I always kind of use this basic analogy that I kind of came to me a few years ago, and it's not my own. I think other people have, you know, we all stand on the shoulders of giants when it comes to philosophical thought, ideas around consciousness, existence. Like, these aren't new ideas necessarily, but this kind of perspective came to me, and I talked to friends about it, and a lot of friends really resonated with it. I'm like, man, I've never heard it explained that way. Brian was one of those guys who was like, that's a really good explanation. Like, I've never heard anyone say it that way. And keep in mind too, when I talk about these things, or as I express them, I'm not expressing factual accuracy. I'm not expressing what I believe is actually necessarily real, but it's the concept and idea itself that can assist the observer in being able to sort of integrate that into their paradigm and help with their own personal evolution. These ideas and concepts, once integrated and experienced, can help the person to sort of evolve and grow in new ways that may help them to experience their spiritual aspect, or the spiritual aspect of themselves more fully. So when I say, like, what I'm about to say, it's not like, this is how it is, believe this, this is the truth of it. It's like, no, this is an idea, it's an allegory, it's a story that can sort of help illustrate the idea.
The audience are, I hope they're well aware of it, you know.
Yeah. Are they out there?
I hope.
Oh, I see.
The audience.
Just keep looking like, I don't see anyone. So in general, if you see it like this, imagine, and this is a loaded word, the word God is such a loaded word because it comes with so many connotations and belief systems and ideas about the world and religions and everything else. But we'll use that term God for just a minute because we all kind of understand it.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine God or creator as an omniscient consciousness or being that knows everything that's ever going to happen, that ever has happened, that never will happen. It's everything, it's omniscient, it's all that ever could be. It knows everything about everything, except it doesn't know one thing. It doesn't know what it's like to not know everything. It doesn't know what it's like to not be God. So what does it do? It takes its own consciousness and divides it into two, instantly creating relativity. And on one side, it remains as itself, as its omniscient present, whereas the rest of it births itself into an infinite amount of consciousness that you would refer to as the universe, a standing still thing, and then it breathes itself into that creation.
Yeah.
You know, again, conceptually speaking, this isn't factual accuracy.
Yeah. No, but that's amazing, Ken. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and so when you think about it this way, it's not something to believe in, it's something to consider. And I tend to live in a world of, or a paradigm where I don't have a lot of belief systems. I have a lot of considerations, strong considerations.
Yes.
And within those considerations, I live in a world of probabilities. With this consideration of, are aliens real? What's the probability in my reality that is true? Well, I give that a 99%, you know, or 95% truth in my reality, and that's going to shape how I see the world. Is the Earth flat? I'm given that like 1% possibility. I don't know for sure. I haven't been up there, but I'm 99.9% sure.
I'm on a journey where I'm trying to deconstruct or do a documentary about construction or construct of the world.
Yeah.
I want to do a documentary about this.
The
and
construct.
This will be perhaps the biggest documentary of my life.
Interesting.
Basically about talking about everything in terms of the way, how from the creation all the way down to the origin, morality, all of that in layers. I mean, this is...
It's all there, all the constructs that we create. I mean, here on Earth, like, you know, even religion itself. And I think some people think religion is sort of the foundation of how the universe began, but I tend to see religion as more of a human's understanding of what truth exists, you know, or what absolute truth is.
So I actually do want to circle around back into that religious context and history, science a little bit more. But let's go back into the
back into the thing.
Because we were in the realm of consciousness, right?
Yeah, so God splits itself, you know, the idea of God or creator or that level of consciousness splits itself into two and instantly creates relativity. And on one side remains as itself as the omniscient present being. And in the other side, the consciousness that's split off from it, that energy, we'll call it energy for now, that's split off from it, births itself into an infinite amount of what we would call atoms, space, and time. A playground, so to speak, of existence, where now it can breathe itself into this reality, forgetting what it is. And the goal may be to go through the eras of existence to recall what it is. And by doing so, it may be giving itself an experience that helps it to grow or evolve in some way. And the challenge with that is that you go, well, why would God need to grow or evolve? You know, that kind of thing. And I don't know the answer to that, but there is an experience that's being had, and it could be just as simple as all of this realm is simply just art. It's just, we wanted, you know, consciousness wanted to go deeper from disconnecting from knowing God itself or being that level of consciousness. And that in itself is something that creates beauty or a beautiful experience for the master consciousness. It could be just as simple as that. But I tend to think there's something to be gained here because we can watch our own experience. We all evolve. We all gain knowledge and become greater throughout our lives with experiences and learning. And so when you think of it from that perspective, that means now that this reality, all of it, there's not an ounce of it that's not master consciousness. It's all God.
Right.
So that means that this floor, you, the bottle, myself, everything is God. And so now you've got the idea that reality and our existence and all of existence itself is God experiencing itself subjectively in a perceived relative physical universe in order to provide itself with an experience of growth and evolution.
Do you think that God can be a personal God, however?
A personal God?
Besides what you described, you say you describe God as like this a being that can be expressed and experienced by everything and everyone, but can it also be a personal, like in a relationship type of God? Can it be that God?
Any relationship that you would have with God would come from the perspective of God, that is you or me. And that is saying that God is now having a relationship with itself. And on this end, it doesn't realize it, and on this one, it does.
Is there a name for this mindset, perspective?
Probably. Like, you know, like I've through my channeling experiences and the things that I've experienced and been witness to, and when it first happens to you, you're like, wow, I just came up with this, or I've never heard this before. But then you start reading some books and you're like, oh, all these philosophers have been talking about this for years, that kind of thing.
So I come from a pretty unique theistic background.
Yeah.
However, not your complete conservative, sheltered theistic, not that way.
Yeah.
I was very much cage-free.
Okay.
Still theistic, but I grew up, experienced all of the different denominations that there is within the Christian world. And then
there were quite a few.
It wasn't until I was older that I experienced or went into the realm of studying that, studying about the, gosh, I'm blacking out here.
While you were a Christian studying?
Yeah. So it wasn't until I grew up older, I studied history of Reformation, and the actual historicity of the Bible, et cetera,
like Luther and all that.
Yeah. I wanted to, went far into that route. So the God that you describe, for me, is what we consider as a pantheistic view.
Yeah, and
it's in that realm.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, there is that pantheistic
mm-hmm.
perspective, and it generally coincides with that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, a lot of my perspectives are derived from my own experience. That's kind of where I start, because I was brought up Christian, I was brought up Lutheran, which is a German-based Christian perspective. Or at least ours was German Lutheran. And it was a lot about the fear of God, not the love of God. So there was a lot of that. And eventually I kind of stepped away from that. And as I continued on through my spiritual evolution, personal evolution.
Did you, just personal question.
Yeah.
Did you have something against the teachings? Is that why you, or
no,
did you,
not at all.
Were you curious about other views, generally speaking? Or?
No, not at all. I had nothing against it. I eventually did not agree with a lot of the doctrine or culture around it eventually. But it followed Jesus' teachings, which I really liked, and that was a whole different conversation. But for me, I had such an abrupt awakening when I had my, quote unquote spiritual awakening, as cliche as it sounds. It happened in California and all that kind of stuff. But once that happened, it was such a profound shift and change in my reality. And it was such an impactful moment that my whole reality changed. I was like, well, everything I've been taught doesn't explain any of this. I know this happened to me, so how do I move forward? And part of that was learning to slowly let go of my old belief systems that didn't serve me anymore. And one of those belief systems happened to be, well, a big part of that was a lot of my Lutheran upbringing. And I don't want to say Christian upbringing, because again, there's nothing wrong with these religions, and there's nothing wrong with being Christian, I think. And I don't even see things as right
or wrong. The Christian terminology has been sort of tarnished, and also it's lost its true meaning, in my opinion.
I think the meaning of a lot of what, and this is just my own personal experiences, I think a lot of the meaning in what Jesus had to say may have been not misinterpreted, but sort of a lot of the purpose in his message, I think, got lost or kind of washed out.
Yeah.
But again, men
are flawed. Would you agree? Men are flawed.
Well, yeah.
Men are flawed.
Humans are going to.
Religion, in a sense, religion is man-made, because before religion,
100%.
like the terminology religion, if you really go back, it's all man-made.
Yeah, it's just man's understanding of what absolute truth is, and through their own existence, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And again, I want to make sure I'm being very clear. I'm very thankful for my Christian upbringing. I'm very thankful my parents took us to church and took us to Sunday school, and we learned all that. But when the time came for me to consider the new experiences I was having and how to move forward, it was necessary for me to sort of disconnect from that being my main worldview, my main paradigm, and sort of integrate that into a new paradigm. And through that, what I started to learn was that a a lot of my Christian perspectives would not allow me to explore according to the way I was supposed to believe. Right. Didn't allow me to explore.
It's like a heresy if you go and explore the forbidden lands.
Yeah, I can't explore freely with my mind and heart what's going on with me, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm a human. I'm a sovereign human. I want to know. I know my heart's intention. I'm not trying to touching the microphone. I know my heart's intention. I'm not trying to do anything evil or bad or call upon some sort of, negative consciousness or demons, as people might. Nothing like that. Yeah. But I want the freedom to go, well, I have questions and I want to figure it out. Well, you're not meant to know that. Nah, I don't give me the line that if it's not in this book, this ancient book, that I am not meant to know, because that's how we believed. Like, can't do that. So as that went on and I sort of started to open my mind up, I started reading new books and started having a lot more channeling experiences, which opened my eyes and heart to a lot of new information.
Can we define that channeling real quick? Because a lot of people have a different interpretation, especially theistic people will have a completely different perspective to that, like almost like a heretic to them. It really is.
No, and it is. I almost don't even use the term, but I've come to accept it because it's the closest thing that makes sense. Okay. I could tell you right now, we could do an entire 3 hours on the definition of what this is, but to sum it up simply, most people, and I think if you just see it on the whole on the outside, channeling is like entering an altered state of being and receiving messages from angels or demons or other consciousness, and then being able to sort of reiterate that information back. Sure, like maybe that's what happens for some people, but I think if you really get into the nitty gritty of what it is, that very shallow definition does not do the idea service at all. What I do think is that, as I explained in this sort of construct idea of what the universe is, that each human being really is the expression of a soul. So your soul, so to speak, we'll just call it the soul, is existing through the human. Fundamentally, you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a temporary human experience in a physical relative universe. So from that idea, that soul isn't what you have. You are that. You have a body. You have human. But that soul is an interdimensional consciousness that exists on all planes of relative existence. It's like the universe doesn't want me to talk about this. This is my favorite part too. You got to keep this in. You got to keep it in. That was so good. And I haven't hit that. I haven't talked about this to anyone in quite some time. So.
What is about this, Ken? Like, you can't even explain this,
It's me, bro. This kind of shit happens to me all the time. I've come to embrace it.
Has to be that shoes.
Right. Has to be his shoes.
Spotless.
And of course, it couldn't be when we were like trying to figure out the cameras. It's like got to be right now. We're human beings having a spiritual experience, but fundamentally it's the opposite. We're spiritual beings having a temporary physical human experience in this relative universe. And if you see it from that point of view, you are the soul, you're not the human. And your soul has a human, not reverse like most people believe. And so as the soul, you don't just exist on this plane of existence, you exist on all planes of existence throughout the entire hierarchy of interdimensional reality.
We're fast tracking a little bit, but this you're heading towards the direction where I was going to ask you. But you're pre-answering some of these questions.
And so it's important to understand this latter analogy in order to really understand channeling, because otherwise you go, you're a demon, you're a heretic, you're summoning the spirits.
So this so-called channeling, it's actually it exists also in the theistic realm too, but its terminology is different.
And I think
in the context is different as well.
Yeah, and I think it can. When I first heard channeling, when I first woke up, I was like, I'm not dealing with that. That sounds awful. I don't want something in my body. It's like some people may experience it as that, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, that's not what it is for me. But it is the same thing for people to experience it that way. And so what you can do is, after meditation, after enlightening yourself, after going through the processes of life through time that sort of offer you your own personal evolution, what you're doing is you're expanding your own conscious awareness of spiritual energy, of physical energy, of how the universe functions. And if you expand yourself to a certain amount, you're essentially expanding your vibrational field. and everything's vibration, and humanity exists within a threshold
We're
of
come
vibration.
Back to that topic too.
Right.
The
So
vibration,
we're within
sound.
this threshold of vibration, and your soul goes through all the thresholds of vibration. So what you can do is train yourself to alter your vibration, which is what you're doing, and access not just the information that the soul has in this place. You can access the interdimensional consciousness that is you. So you can gain information and access information from your higher dimensional self, or your higher self, or your spirit guides, which probably are just you manifesting in alternate dimensions of space and time. And at that point in their evolution, their goal is to go back and assist the lower aspect of its own being. And so that's what channeling has become for me, that I can access that information specifically about myself. I tend to not access like other beings, so to speak, air quotes. I don't really do that, but I have. But I also understand that I'm not necessarily accessing other beings. So this is the other thing about channeling. People will think, no, I've accessed Ashtar, I've accessed, Archangel Michael, and I'm receiving messages, and it's like, I'm not saying you're not. It's not my place. I don't have your experience. I don't know. I can't say that for sure. But I will say this, one thing I've learned is that the universe is just data. It's like imagine a massive internet, right? And so if you want to go to Best Buy, but Best Buy's closed, you go to the internet, bestbuy.com, you have everything you can access from Best Buy. You can buy anything on there, read information about cameras, whatever you want to do, but you're not at Best Buy. It's not really Best Buy, but you can access the consciousness of Best Buy and download all that information and access it and use it, that data as information in your own life. And that's what my experience of channeling has come to be. You can access other people's and other energy that exists and receive that vibration and communication in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's not like there's an alien sitting
I
on.
absolutely understand.
Like it's not like there's an alien sitting on a
say-
spaceship and you call him up and he's like, "I'm trying to eat dinner here." Like, what are you doing?
I do have to say one thing to the camera real quick, because I have a lot of theistic friends who are interested in my channel, and so they might find it a little bit weird that I am getting into this realm, but
Or even entertaining the idea.
You have to understand this. Like what Ken said earlier, I'm a free person who obviously is now a fully grown adult. I'm no longer a boy who grew up in church anymore.
Sure.
And I finally took that step, the first step into the real world as of my own self-discovery, not from what my parents taught me, not from what the church taught me. I hope the audience understand this.
Yeah, for sure. I think they do. I think we can all get on board with that. And I think you're probably concerned that people are going to have a certain perspective on you. Yeah.
No, but not just that, but I also thinking a little bit bigger.
Okay.
So my channel is not just obviously catered towards one worldview of people, but I want everyone to come to understand, because again, the things that we're talking about right now is really what people want to hear about and know about and learn about these days. And I have many, gosh, Ken, I have each of some of these questions.
That's the thing,
we can
man.
get into hours.
And it depends. It really depends upon how, like when you said what's channeling, it's like I can give you the bare bones, but like you say, there are audience members that are like, that doesn't seem comfortable, and I don't like that idea. And it's like, well, if I describe it in my experience, it'll maybe change your perspective some.
Let me ask in this way. So keeping the audience in mind. So
Yeah.
What do you prioritize, or what do you think is more, what's the word? What is more important, experience or knowledge? Oh, let me ask that again, because that audio.
Yeah. What I want to
just think about it for a second.
Yeah. I also want to say one more thing about channeling too, though. Every single human being is hardwired to channel and does channel, and channel in this way, because this is what channeling is. Everyone has a conscience, and when you do something wrong, or you steal something, or you hurt somebody's feelings, or you say something wrong to your wife, and you walk away, and there's that pit, there's that energy that's coming up inside of you that's communicating something to you. That's channeling. You're accessing higher parts of yourself unconsciously. You're not doing it consciously, but you can do it consciously. And basically you're just diving into your own spiritual pool of knowledge and being, like the totality of what you are, and then going into that pool with conscious intention to discover what it is you're looking for.
Maybe this is just me. I don't want to address it again. The people who are watching, because in the realm of entire worldview consists of only two things. It really boils down to two things. There's either a monotheistic God or there's some sort of other form of God. And then everything else, I mean, there's also the realm of agnostic, which is like the middle ground. But other than that, the world it's going to boil down to two things. Rather, the mind gave rise to the matter, or the other way.
Yeah, you can basically put perspectives in two different boxes. The first box is that consciousness is the result of matter. Meaning, if you lined up a bunch of atoms a certain way, put them together, form a brain, fire some electricity through that, a being comes online and now is self-aware. And so that once you kill that brain and stop providing it with electricity, the being goes away, it's no longer there, consciousness is gone. The other camp, the other box of, that you can put people in, is that matter is the result of consciousness. And that's exactly what the first idea was when I was talking about God sort of splitting itself into two. That all of physical matter is just consciousness. And it is expressing through higher forms of its own self within that realm. And I tend to think that that's
the reason why I started with what is consciousness too is because this realm, consciousness is a realm that is, I would say, that is the middle ground of all religious views with worldview, and also in the middle ground of morality of good and evil. And I like to talk about consciousness as a middle ground point because this is like I can talk to anyone, like, and I plan on talking to just about everybody, just high level people, obviously, But when it comes to, again, this worldview, and then the Christian people, particularly the theist, when we get into this realm of the channeling or that terminology channeling,
I don't really like the word. I don't like the word, to be honest.
It rubs them really badly, and then oftentimes they hear it once and they're just like, it's kind of like the way how worldly people hear Christian or Christianity. They're like, Right. It's like that, but then it's the other way around for them.
Yeah,
with the
for sure.
Or,
I can see it.
Yeah. And so, but for me, I understand both, and so I'm like trying to reconcile both. That's the whole purpose of me doing this, the whole interview, and like figuring out what is life and all this and that.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, let's go back to the consciousness. Theists have to understand that our human beings, we consist of three things, right? Body, mind, soul. But then let's get a little bit more specific. We have body, which is physical matter, which is in the realm of material, which scientists love. Okay, we're mutual.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's your robot meat suit.
Yeah. And no matter if you talk about, we're in the simulation or we're in like some sort of a matrix or whatever, like no one can deny this right now. Like little physical. Like I touch you, I know what you look like.
Sure. Like, even though it's all holographic projection, but yeah, sure.
Let's not go down that road.
That is the road. That is none of this is real. Not the way you think it is, but it's absolutely what you believe it to be. And that's how it functions. And it needs consciousness to do that. Nothing happens to you, it happens through you. You're projecting everything you see. Everything you see isn't projecting into you. I know, and like science is starting to prove that. So
it's my theistic realm that is having a constant clash with that right now. So it's like, but anyway. So then we have a mind, brain, and mind, which is closely tied together. Then we have the spirit and the soul that are closely together. And I did a little recording on this like the other day. I can't remember exactly everything, but I would say the correlation between those other two realms, because body connects with all two of the other realms, right? Body, mind, soul, or the spirit, whatever you want to call, So for me, body is more closer of a connection towards, I mean, you can put it this way, one perspective, body, brain, right? If you want to stay materialistic, right? And then you have soul. And then if you want to get spiritual realm, you can say body, mind, and then the spirit.
Sure.
And so it kind of links that way.
Yeah.
But regardless, the middle ground that bridges this whole reality is the mind. It really is, if you really think about it.
You can see it from that way,
Yeah.
sure. It's a translation between the spirit and the physical.
Because I believe you know it, and many people these days know, we have a spirit man. Like you expressed earlier, it's like we're more spiritual beings experiencing what it's like to be a human in a physical body, right?
Right, sure.
So if, gosh, I lost train of my thought here. I was going somewhere. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that I want the theist to know that we cannot disregard the realm of the mind or the conscious realm, because oftentimes they brush it off. They really do. They don't really like to get into this subject and discuss it in a scientific way, and also in a more philosophical way, because it is a difficult thing to correlate the mind and the brain to that of a realm of metaphysic or, abstract world, which is in the realm of the unseen world.
To be absolutely respectful of that religion and perspective, and I was once very much a part of that, I think the reason for that is because of what the doctrine and belief system is within Christianity. I recently had a friend, talk about this in some ways. We were talking about a video we watched called Imagining the 10th Dimension. Mm-hmm. And it was the idea of like how reality functions and all of that. And at the end of it, we'll just wait here for a second.
Yeah. That's fine.
But it's the idea that actually I want to stay in this energy with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm about to I was not paying attention to the cameras, and it's like, I'll just stay in this energy with you. This is good though, because I feel
this is way more than I expected.
It's because I'm here. Anything. It's the law of like cameras on with Kenny. Cameras and Kenny.
We'll include all this too.
So that's fine. Yeah. So and again, to be respectful of Christianity and anyone who believes that, because I have no ill will toward it whatsoever. If anything, it's positive because of the way it raised me up. Mm-hmm. I think the reason why a person with that sort of belief system can't reconcile or doesn't look or doesn't strive to know the mind and the soul and like all of that is because of the doctrine and the belief system itself. It says, here's your biggest concern. Mm-hmm. You need to formulate a relationship and belief with this idea and being Jesus. Mm-hmm. You need to have a personal relationship with him, because ultimately the goal is to save you from hell, and so you can enter the bliss of heaven and worship God for the rest of your life and be in that space. Mm-hmm. That sounds great. That sounds amazing. Mm-hmm. Why would I ever concern myself with anything else? Mm-hmm. That's way bigger than anything else. And when you think about the mind and all of that, it just almost seems like fun thoughts to them, like party talk, but it doesn't have any inherent meaning. And that was kind of let me say that again. That was kind of illustrated to me in a very real way when I talked to a Christian friend of mine recently who is extremely Christian, very, very Christian. And I say that in a way that, well, let me say this. It was illustrated to me in a way where, by a friend of mine who's a very strong Christian recently, when he sat down with me and we watched this video that was talking about dimensions and time and space. And I said, it's fascinating, right? I mean, what do you think about all that? And his response was like, that's like asking me, what do I think about like if we lived on the moon? It's like, well, no, but this really applies to our life. He goes, it doesn't. It's just like fairy tale. It's just noise. And that really, I think that really illuminated a lot for me. It's the same people too.
Same people.
So I think to that point, I think they're going to go here.
Walk down that long hallway.
It is what it is. This is good though, because I really want to make sure no one gets.
This is organic though.
And I really want to make sure that no one gets the impression I'm saying anything negative about Christianity, because
of course.
very little negative to say about Christianity.
Kenny, I want to get to the bottom of everything.
Of course. But that's
people want
to
see it too. People want to see it too.
But this is the thing. You want to get to the bottom of everything. But religion, most religions, have these sort of invisible these threshold walls that are on the outside of where you can go.
Yeah.
And if you step outside of that, you're no longer part of the religion. You're going into the pseudo area, and they don't want you to do that.
Right.
And that's because it's stepping outside of the doctrine of belief.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And that was really illustrated to me in real terms, in real life, with my friend recently, who, when I asked him about that video, I was like, this is fascinating. Alternate dimension, space and time. And he was like, it means nothing to me. It's like asking me what would it be like to live on the moon or
also,
whatever.
I want audience to understand, just because someone is a Christian, it doesn't give them any type of credential or that person is right in any way, because you can have an infant Christian. What I mean by that is like someone who just got saved, and they don't know nothing about in terms of the theology or the Bible or even like the other worldview. Doesn't know anything. It's like a little baby who just finally grew teeth.
Even to that point too, though, it's like I think most Christians are aware of that. I think you might meet some people, whether they're Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or whatever religions out there. You're not talking about a religion. You're talking about the idea of religion itself, which is the idea of ideology and perspective. And if you ever get someone who seems to be arrogant or think they know more than you or any of that kind of thing, that's not the religion. That's the individual who's still learning and evolving and healing, and in some ways maybe even unconscious to themselves, the things that they need to work on.
I can see that.
And we all have that. Like everyone's got that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with Christianity. I'm just using that as an example because I was Christian, and I was and followed those teachings and was in that. And then recently I had that interaction with a friend that really illuminated those ideas, so. It's
so unfortunate. I am not one of those Christians. I want you to know, and I think you know that.
No, I do, yeah.
I am.
But just to stop you too, I don't even like saying like one of those Christians. It's like, no, I don't even see it that way. I don't see Muslims that way. I don't see Jews that way. I don't see anybody else.
Maybe I shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah.
I meant to say like.
And I know what you mean. I'm sorry.
I mean to say like someone a little bit not traditional, but unconventional, but yet I'm more interested in like other colors of this world and the other realms of this world.
And I think
that's where I am.
For you, it seems like the foundation of where your jumping point is your Christian belief and your Christian faith.
Yeah.
And you're going out and I don't want to say testing it in some way, because that's probably not right, but you are willing to go beyond the threshold walls or push them out. And then other people that have the same doctrine as you, when you turn around and you go, okay, listen, we're in the same camp, but how do you handle this question?
Right, exactly.
And you watch that response and you go, well, maybe I need to push my walls out further, or maybe I need to switch something up. And I think it takes a level of courage to do that, because I went through the same thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got an entire belief foundation, like a foundation of your whole reality is built in a belief, and now you have to strip that away in order to be truly sovereign free. That's hard, brother. That's a hard thing to do.
Can we touch up on this subject now then?
Yeah.
Absolute truth versus subjective truth.
Oh, you're just going all the way to the highest peaks.
Let's go, Ken.
Instead of like building it up to get there, you're just going, let's take it. I was hoping for like a more bottom-up approach. Absolute truth versus what? Because you asked me about
subjective
wisdom too
truth.
Earlier, and wisdom or knowledge, but.
So Kenny, I told you I have a lot of intriguing things that would,
Absolute truth versus what?
Subjective truth.
Yeah, absolute truth can never be experienced. It's impossible. Until you get to the point of view of absolute truth, which is the Godhead, so to speak. And for the rest of your life, you'll just chase
what
if
that absolute truth made himself known to the world?
What perspective is absolute truth being experienced?
Absolute truth meaning like the God, like in monotheistic, particularly in the God of the Bible, like in the Christian realm.
Sure.
So let's just say with that, because by definition, God is unlimited. There's no rival. There's nothing equal to that. So.
Right.
So absolute truth in that sense, because otherwise, if that being didn't actually reveal himself to us, the human beings, right, or even angelic beings for that matters, how would any creation of anything ever know what is the ultimate good?
Right. You can never know absolute truth, because the moment that Paul knows absolute truth, Paul ceases to be Paul. So until you know all of space and time, all of existence, and can see the perspectives through the eyes of all existence, not just humanity and Earth, but the entire universe, multiverse, all of it, until you can get to that point and have every experience that could ever be possible in every realm of every dimension of every space-time that ever existed, now and forever, you can't know absolute truth. Because knowing all of those perspectives builds absolute all truth. That is the all, instead of all that is. Or maybe I reverse that, but that is the concept. And so again, when I'm saying this, this isn't like, I don't say this as like my absolute truth. I'm not saying it's factually accurate. It's a philosophical perspective that starts to put things in alignment for that self-growth that we're talking about. So in that perspective, the difference between absolute truth and truth is the difference between, in this circumstance, God and all its parts.
Can I ask another question then?
Yeah.
What's the difference between truth, fact, logic?
Truth, the way that I use it, is the expression of consciousness through the observer. So when you laugh at something, or you find something funny, or Paul likes a certain baseball team, or Paul picks up a baby and takes care of it, there's love, there's kindness, there's compassion, and all that's emanating and working through Paul. That's truth. You're seeing the truth of Paul. This is who Paul is. That's truthful. In that sense, a liar is truthful. You're just not seeing the lie. So when a liar lies to you, they're being truthful. They're being their truth. And so that's what truth is. Fact is accurate knowledge of a given thing or subject within the realm of this universe. But again, facts can be hard too, because you can say, well, this is a plastic bottle. That's a fact. Get down to the quantum level. What is it? Well, it's no longer a plastic bottle. It's something different, but it is a plastic bottle. So what's the fact about it? You're going, well, this has got an Avion label on it. It's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't on this side. So what's the fact about it? But it's accurate knowledge or information about a given thing or subject within a physical realm. And I think logic is an observer's method for reaching conclusions on data and information within the realm of the mind. That's the first time anyone's ever asked me that.
Give me a second. Let me just observe that.
Yeah. I think people are way too caught up on factual accuracy in the world, in this universe. Like, everyone wants to know what the facts are and the information before they believe or before they choose, and facts are not nearly as important as other elements of our being. Like, we put way too much emphasis on the mind.
The reason why I ask this question is because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people in this world currently that are just in the Western culture.
Yeah.
People are lost. They don't know what they want with their life. They don't know who they are. They have no hope. They just exist. Kind of like a debris in the air. They're just floating, carried by the wind. Just kind of go along with it. And
step by step.
For me, this makes absolutely no sense, Kenny. I still very much lean towards the idea that a creation is created with purpose.
Sure.
And that's the case with any creation. Doesn't matter if it's even the material creation, phone, chair that we're sitting in, whatever the man-made, these are all man-made stuff. But man makes it with purpose and clear intention.
Yeah.
We don't make things, literally anything, without any intention or purpose behind it. We don't. And this is the way how theists also believe, as you know, when God creates this entire existence of world, reality, whatever you want to call it, he creates with purpose, except that the more we study the nature and science, physics, and all the other human subjects, like there's like a bunch of different subjects, but the main category of science and math and all these things that we study, we come to know that God actually knew exactly what he was doing when he created this world in terms of like fine-tuning, I'm sure you know, and just the precision of the nature, the sound, like in terms of how much humans are capable of comprehending the sound. We have a decibel like limitation, right? Like it's like a 20-something for human beings, and then like it's a negative up to certain decibel. We have a limitation, right? And the same thing with the temperature, like even our body temperature. We have an external temperature, then we have an internal temperature. And that's like perfectly right there. And the same thing with like the way how the Earth curvatures to where we are in terms of our planet compared to other planets in the solar system is perfectly fine-tuned, So, like you think about these things and like the way how nature also is designed. In terms of time, we can get to time.
Time, buddy. That's a whole other podcast. I can get into time with you.
Okay.
And time travel, which is real. Side note.
Oh gosh, there's so much going on here. But so
the purpose of God creating humanity, obviously, clearly for human beings, and all
so
that.
I like to believe everything in life has a purpose, because without a living being or come into existence without purpose, for me, this defies laws of logic. This defies the laws of nature. This defies, like, almost like, I don't know, like what is laws of knowing what is to be, essentially. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It does. No, it does. I think that people that talk about having no purpose in life, or life has no purpose or no meaning, and I think that there's absolutely truth in that. There's truth in that, and the truth comes through the observer. And I don't think people see it that way. But at the same time, I also think there's no inherent meaning or purpose to Earth, to the universe, except the purpose and meaning lies in creating and making purpose. So you were talking about the purpose of God.
Yeah,
and
purpose of life, essentially.
So, and someone who has a more scientific view, which I don't disagree with this view in general, would say, well, it's not that God made the earth with purpose. It's that the earth didn't make the temperature work perfectly for our skin and our bodies, and didn't make the trees provide us oxygen so we could breathe. They would say the earth came into formation, and because of certain circumstances, oxygen became present. And because of those circumstances, that allowed humanity and life to begin to grow. And so those are two different points of view.
Completely.
To which I say it's not this or that. I think it's this and that. I think consciousness birthed existence into being, physical existence into being, and those opportunities for life to grow.
See, I think that's where we draw the line there between you and I still.
Well, let me finish here. Yeah. So the idea being that those circumstances were there, and that Earth ends up getting oxygen in this parallel reality, and humanity is birthed from that, and now Earth can go on to have whatever it's going to have with all the humans and all the experiences that are going to ultimately provide master consciousness with what it needs or wants or desires from its creation, from whatever it built. Now, Christian perspective, scientific perspective, to some extent, it's not 100% in alignment with scientific, and it's not 100% in alignment with Christian, but it does encapsulate them both, and it also makes you realize, what would the difference be? Why would it be bad if that's how the method is for all of consciousness to awaken in a physical realm. Like, why would it be bad? Why is it a bad belief to not believe that God was sitting at like an office table somewhere being like, I'm going to build Earth, and he takes clay and he makes an Earth and in his own way, and it just builds a planet. I don't understand why it's worse to consider that idea of creation comes through the birth of a universe.
So are you in a way saying consciousness itself is essentially like surpassing that of who God is, but then like but in another way you're also saying consciousness and is like all these consciousness of the universe is what God is. So
right, there is nothing else. Nothing else exists. And again, I'm not saying this as a definitive statement of I'm right, you're wrong. Not at all, because I could be absolutely wrong. But again, the paradigm, the perspective, and once you step into these paradigms and perspectives, you can see how your reality begins to change. And you can grow from this, like not you, but the proverbial you. Anybody can. That's one of the things I've experienced with it. But the idea being that nothing else exists except God in this perspective. And I didn't even like using the word God. It's the all, like the all, the mastermind mental energy, all that exists is the all. That's all that exists. There's this idea that humanity exists and God exists. And it's like, maybe on some level that's true, but at the very top of it from this paradigm, it's all just God experiencing itself. So why would we tussle over whether or not the way that God created something?
But I already know some of the viewers are watching, they're going to be like, but then we are separate beings, we have our own minds and we can control what we want to do.
Through the illusion of creation, that's what it was meant to be. Like, that's the design.
You call it illusion, though?
Yeah, it's an illusion. It's an illusion that we're separate. Find the drops of water in an ocean. You can't. Find the cells, find the part of your arm that is separate. It's like, no, it's my arm. It's like, well, if I cut it in pieces, but it's one thing. It's one thing. All your cells work together, right? You go, well, this is an individual cell, it's an individual cell. Would you name all your cells? No, you go, it's me, it's my body. It's one thing. And this is the other thing too. And not to challenge it, but everyone believes that God lives within them. Within a Christian perspective, we believed that for years when I was a Christian. But the identity, the human identity, which is to say the ego, is what holds on to the idea that it is not that. It is not God. God is in me, but I am not that.
We're getting extremely complex here because of it, like, even for me as I listen to you, I mean, we had this discussion also off camera. Like, I've known you now, well over 3 years now.
Yeah,
3-4 years. So we had this type of debates and talks, and even now I hear it, and it still baffles me. It really does. And there's a lot of conflicting that's happening in my internal self, because I still have very much believe in the creationism, and also I believe that despite, yes, I agree with you that God experiences through everything because he created everything, and there's not a space or ounce or any space in the existence that he cannot go into.
But you are a separate being from him.
Yes.
And then one day you'll be with him in
but then
paradise.
But then that also defeats the purpose of heaven and hell. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying?
Well, so, if we're going to go down that line, now we can get into how that even exists.
We should go down that route.
Sure.
And then, but before we do,
I mean, because let's
just check our audio. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, let me check my. And that's a delicate.
It is, but it's necessary for us to discuss. Ken, thank you very much. Cool. We were onto something there.
Yeah,
so
we're good.
We were going down into that, down to that subject of heaven and hell.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough one because it's.
Okay, so let me just backtrack for the sake of my own edit. Earlier I said, if we're all one conscious being waiting to be observed into God again down the road, that defeats the purpose of heaven and hell, at least in the terms of theistic mind, you know? So how do you justify that? Because eventually, here's what the theists really absolutely believe, which I also believe, is that there is one thing that really separates us, even greater sense of our consciousness, and that is what we call sin. So when you go down into this realm, I know you may not like it, but I mean,
No,
let's just touch upon it just slightly, because I think it's important. But sin.
How would you define sin?
So yeah, that's a good question. It's a very good question. So now there's a perspective that comes from the worldly perspective, which is what that is from the theistic side, and then there's a sin definition coming from the theist side. When I say the world perspective, I mean it for the theists who are watching, because people, when you generally understand Christianity, or like you're in that world, every other view is considered a world view, because that's how it is in the realm of theist.
So you're saying there's a different definition between a Christian's version of sin versus like the world's version of sin?
No. I mean, sin is a sin no matter what view you have, right?
I don't believe in sin.
I think this is where we're gonna.
So I'm just saying. So so I'm trying to get your definitions of, like, I understand what sin is. I get that. I grew up with that.
Yeah.
So how would you believing in sin? How would you define sin?
It's incredibly difficult, because I don't want to throw you the history of Bible, but again.
No, I just mean generally. How would you, as a Christian, like if someone said, "Well, what's sin?" You'd be like, "Well."
I know, but most people. Let me just say this first. Most people, when it comes to Christianity or the Bible itself, they're not very knowledgeable, and this is actual fact. In my opinion, this is factual.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's truth to it. Sure.
And this is not just a Western thing or Eastern thing. Just people as a whole of the society, in my opinion. I like to think it's more factual than opinion, but yes. Anyway, the reason why I say this is because when it comes to the issue of morality, or the way how we ought to live or how we should live, people don't like any other outside source of any view dictate how they should live their life.
Well, you've already said two words that are hard to reconcile. You said ought and should. By whose standards?
It's gonna get very complex here. I love this sparring.
This could be
intellectual sparring here.
But it's not even the spar, because I don't disagree with anything that you say about it. Like, I don't go, that's wrong, I'm right, nothing like that. But I do think that there are certain paradigms that can restrict, and there are certain paradigms that sort of allow for more self-growth in some ways, for some people, not for everyone. That's not even probably the way I want to say that. Some paradigms that kind of restrict, and then other paradigms that sort of enable in certain ways, and in positive ways and productive ways. So again, when you say like how people should live their lives, it's like, okay, but by what standard?
So the way how I want to, because eventually I do have to say what I believe in, even in my channel. As much as I want to be mutual, interviewing guests and like bringing all kinds of worldview to this platform. Like I still have to eventually come out with and say what I believe, because people are gonna want to know, right?
Well, of course.
I can't be mutual in the middle ground the entire existence.
Well, no.
You will have to pick one or the other eventually. And that's another interesting thing about it, Ken. So in a theistic realm, particularly, I even hate that word too. I keep using that word,
Theistic?
Yeah. So when I say when I say theistic, I'm talking about people who believe in God, particularly monotheistic God, which is the realm of only, God of the Bible. And then even though there's Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, still in the realm of theist. Just
all derived from the same stuff.
Yeah. Gosh, these are the topics that we need to discuss more.
Well, we can just get into a question. I mean, because defining your whole belief system. If you ask me, like, what do you believe? Can I go, geez, Paul, this is going to be a while. Like.
So in order for me to define sin, though, like, I feel like I have to I want to define what I believe sin is to you, not to the audience.
Okay. You don't want them to know, or?
No. Oh. Obviously they know, and
Okay.
what they have. There are many people who are watching. Like, I'm just hypothetically thinking.
Sure.
So, like, I have no control of who's watching either. So, I don't know what they're gonna think. So, I'm disregarding that right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But I want to define it for you. So, sin is essentially okay. In order to talk about sin, you have to talk about good and evil, and and then in order to do that, it really comes down to God and Satan or the devil. I mean, outside of that, is there anything outside of that that we currently are aware of or we're knowledgeable to historically? What like is there any essence of that is good and evil? Like, is there something beyond good and evil? Like, we can't even fathom that. You know what I mean? So it's going to come down to God and Satan.
I don't know that I.
Would you agree?
I don't know that I'm in alignment with that perspective, that there's nothing outside of good and evil. I tend to see good and evil more in alignment with, as a mechanism within this realm to facilitate experiences in observers in order to produce the opportunity for growth. That's the most general way I can kind of say it. That's like, yeah, just, it's a pretty simple way, like, kind of a simple way of saying it. I don't believe that good and evil are these.
How would you ever justify morality in first place then, if you don't believe in the concept of good and evil?
What do you mean morality, or what do you mean
morality,
by justifying?
Morality derives because good and evil exist, and any conscious decisions that we make as a human being, right?
Sure.
Rather we're driving straight on the highway and not curving to the left or right, right?
Yeah.
Rather we eat fast food that even though we know it's bad for us, but we eat it just because we're hungry,
Sure.
It's cheap and whatever, but it's bad for our body. We do it knowingly it's bad for our body. You know what I mean? Like, every conscious decision that you ever make has some sense of understanding of morality. It ties in with like the realm of what is good and what is bad. You know what I mean? So I personally feel this way, and I'm leaning more towards that way. There's no like necessarily a mutual. Do we ever make any mutual decision of anything that is nor good or nor bad? Like is that even possible? You know what I mean?
I don't completely. I was tracking there for a minute. I'm trying to track with you now.
Every thought that you ever make, rather is whatever thought it is, it's got some essence of good or bad.
Right.
Essence to it.
So then good and evil is a spectrum. Because if you're a serial killer and you kill 30 people and you do terrible things to them, and like Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, who had people, like I think he had people in his freezer, you would define that as evil.
Well, of course.
Right?
Yeah. There's a standard of, like, in terms of society, and there's also collective humans, which is society, sorry, and but individuals as well. There are certain things like bluntly murdering like some innocent person or just a regular person. That's
rage,
wrong.
Rage and killing someone. Yeah. So let's just go extreme. Let's talk about like a figure like Mao, or somebody during World War II. Such a hot button word, but her name, but like Adolf Hitler, what he did, the atrocities he committed to millions of people, mainly a lot of Jews, but a lot of other people as well. There hasn't been anyone who's committed those level of atrocities, since we know of in modern history. So we'll just put that as like the equivalent of probably like evil incarnate, especially for people that were in a concentration camp. Like, that's evil incarnate. So we agree that that's evil. Well, let's back up now. Is stealing a candy bar evil?
Technical standpoint, yes.
Okay. Right. So when I babysit kids and stuff, I'm involved with children on occasion, the friends of mine and stuff. If one of them takes something from another kid, makes them cry, is that evil?
I see where you're going. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a spectrum. Like, we can kind of go like, some evil isn't as bad as other.
There's
evil.
Always going to have to be, so every design of creation beings or whatever, there's layers to it. You know, there's like layers of levels to the spectrum, like you're saying. So if we're going to talk about the gray areas, we can certainly go there too. That's another fascinating topic right there.
But you got to there is no black and white. Everything's gray. Life happens
for
in
me.
the gray.
For me. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just pointing out for me.
Yeah.
But I also do believe it's tricky because the way how I view the world, eventually things will come down to black and white. And I don't mean it just my own belief, but in terms of like in this current physical world, I know there's a lot of chaos, a lot of views, and a lot of things like that.
So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying black and white doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like we all know, like, wow, that was awful. You should not have done that. Or why'd you punch that guy? Or my God, he killed that person. That's awful. Like we all label that, don't get me wrong. But I think that as you start to transcend duality, and again, you, not you, but I mean, as anyone begins to transcend duality, you start to enter into alter vibrational perspectives and alternate states, not states of being, but let me restate that. As anyone transcends duality and accesses new levels of consciousness, you start to see that black and white isn't so black and white anymore. It still exists within your perspective, but there are new perspectives to take on. And what I mean by that is like, well, let me say it this way. Imagine you have a 20 by 20 mile square, and you paint that entire square with 1 inch black and white checkerboard across the whole thing, and you're standing on it and you look at it, you go, yeah, this is black and white. Clearly this is black and white. But if you were to get into a helicopter and start to rise up, the further and further you get up, those black and white squares begin to make gray, because you're seeing it from a completely different point of view now. Now, the lower you go down, yes, there's black and white, but the higher you go up, it turns into that color gray. And I think that is a decent analogy for spiritual evolution and sort of transcending human perspective. Because black and white does exist, evil and good do exist, but I don't think it is the end-all be-all. I think that they are mechanisms and methods for humanity to ultimately learn more about itself, provided to us from your perspective by the master consciousness.
Jordan Peterson is one figure right now. He's become this face of sort of like the modern day people who wrestle with this idea of essentially good and evil.
Yeah.
And he has a perspective coming from a clinical psychologist, which is incredibly complex.
I'm very familiar with Peterson. I love Peterson.
And then he's also now getting into the realm of theist. And you can see a lot of the things that he's wrestling with himself as well, as do we all, But what I'm saying is this, good and evil existed prior to human existence.
See, I don't necessarily,
but
in the way you're going, I don't necessarily, I'm not in alignment with that, but yes, at the same time, sure.
Because we're not, like, I have this, again, this is black and white for me. I am, even though I understand what you were saying in terms of earlier about we're all gods and like, we have.
No, you say we're all gods? Is that what you said?
That's what you said earlier.
No, that's not what I said.
No, you said we're all gods in the sense like we are experiencing.
No, we're all God.
God,
the only thing that exists, in the highest of highest perspectives. Again, conceptually speaking, not definitively as a religious belief.
That sounds like what I call it, a little God doctrine. So could you like enlighten me in that terms,
sure.
like what you mean by that?
God is the only thing that exists. There's nothing outside of it.
Yes.
And it's not. I don't mean that in a way that God made a chair, and it's part of Him. Everything that exists is the foundational building blocks of God. He pulled out his rib and made, pardon the pun, but pulled out his rib and made an entire universe. Well, what's powering that universe? The idea behind Christian perspective is that each individual person has their own soul, has their own free will, has their own ability to be little mini gods without God power in that universe, making decisions that will either plummet them into eternal perishing to eternal death and suffering, or to eternal bliss and peace. The perspective I have is that all those beings down there that are running around interacting with each other are actually God itself. So when you go to bed at night, and here's a perfect analogy, when you go to bed at night and you have a dream, and you're on the beach, and there's a dog with two heads, and you see a shark jumping out of the ocean, and some guy comes up and says, we gotta run, help me, I gotta get this fire at this house put out. And you're like, let's go. And you run, and there's a guy inside the house, and you both go in and save the guy, and it turns out it's not a guy, it's a kid. He's a small kid. You guys end up getting ice cream together, and the ice cream guy's like, here's your ice cream. Bizarre, weird dream. In that dream, every single person you interacted with, who were they? Who made that happen? You did. Not only were you every single person you interacted with, you were the fire, you were the ocean, you were the shark jumping out of the ocean, you were the double-dogged head, and it was all created based upon Paul's subconscious. Every single aspect of that dream was you, and you were fooling yourself into believing an alternate reality that when you wake up will provide you with some sort of experience. So that's not an exact one-to-one, but it's, again, a general concept that outlines the idea.
Sorry about the little smile here.
No, it's good. The smile's, that's great. No, it means it was impacting.
I'm just loving this whole, I already know there are people who are watching, they're dying for context like this. And so I'm like, the fact that we're giving them like this back and forth. Like,
of course.
Like, yes.
But yeah, and so that's what I mean. And to that, when you said that we're all gods, what I gave you was a massive nutshell of the perspective that I discuss and talk about. I'm not saying that's how it is, but that is the concept that I was discussing. At the same time, when you said that we're all gods, I don't disbelieve or I don't disconsider the idea that each individual human is some sort of little entity that's learning to grow through space and time to become maybe a creator God being. But that still doesn't mean, even if they get to that level, that they're still not the one thing.
So here's one thing. In a biblical way, context, human beings are created in the image of God, whereas the angelic, it does in the book of Genesis.
Let's get it out.
Okay.
Let's make him in the image of us.
Yeah.
Us.
Us.
It doesn't say me.
Well, that's what I meant. But when it says us, it's referring to
whom?
To God. Because God is a three being.
But
God,
see,
the Father, the Holy Spirit.
Sure,
and
I think that's how people try to explain that. They say, well, yeah, but it's the triune God. And it's like, okay, well, Jesus wasn't around yet. Well, yeah, but at the same time, God knew he was going to be around. And it's like, so you're making humans in the image of whom? Does God look like a human? And I'm not throwing trash at you. I always had trouble with that. And when I was a Christian, I was like, what does this mean? And then people would tell me, oh, it's the triune God. And I go, but why does it say other things too?
This topic is actually an extremely complex topic, but
yeah, it's complex.
We'll come and revisit it later down the road, let's just say. Anyway, so where was I going with this earlier? It's about
good and evil.
Good and evil, yeah. For me, it sort of has to come to the black and white level because morality issue ties with it. But again, morality is an extremely sensitive topic. Like this is why the politics exists.
I don't understand how you're using morality necessarily. It's almost like you're talking about it as its own separate thing. Morality is the result. Morality is the desire to create homeostasis within the spectrum of good and evil. That's what morality is.
I suppose that's the way how human beings interpret. So yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I mean, really, with Christian morality, it's based upon the spectrum is no longer good and evil. The spectrum is heaven and hell. And so you want to create a homeostasis within your operations, actions, and being on earth to where you are sliding towards the heaven. You know, that's what morality is. Morality is not even an experience I have on any given day from my paradigm. I don't think about morality. I don't think about moral good and right and wrong. I don't think about my actions from that perspective. That's not to say I don't act within the guidelines that you would go, well, Kenny, this is right and wrong. This is morality. But morality itself as an idea and concept is not my guiding factor.
But we can't escape this. from everyday life.
Can't escape morality?
Yeah, we can't. We really can't. Don't you have sense of like, I did have a friend tell me maybe because of, perhaps, I have been ingrained in the Christian doctrine that I'm always wrestling with this idea of concept of good and evil, and that I'm always like, every time I have a sinful thought or every time I do something evil, that I feel guilt, shame, and that it feels like in a way where I've fell off from I don't even know, I guess a train or vehicle, and that for me to get back onto that, you have to go through the whole repentance and the whole, but again, this is extremely, extremely complex thing for me to try to articulate it with my words.
Yeah, I just mean, I don't think morality is something, morality only exists in the perspective of the observer. And that's based upon its actions.
But if that's the case,
there's no like what I'm saying is there's no master guide to morality.
It doesn't. If you think about the real issue, though, morality is the one thing that causes essentially like religion to form, and then also there's division amongst religion because there's doctrinal difference, which obviously still comes from this morality issue and like this spectrum of judgment of what is right and versus what is wrong.
So that's was that how you would define morality? The spectrum of judgment of what's right and wrong?
That's a good question. No one has ever asked me that.
Well, I'm trying to understand like your definition of morality, because here's the thing: when we talk about these deep concepts, definitions matter. Not so that we can get into it, but it's more like, if you're discussing a perspective that doesn't fully translate to me and I don't understand where you're coming from in that foundation, we're just going to constantly be missing each other back and forth.
So my morality obviously lies from the Bible, and I still am wrestling right now, even now as I make this video and interviewing with you, I'm just being very transparent. Every single day I deal with this talking of war that's happening essentially in my heart, in my mind, and my being, of what is good and what is wrong, and sometimes it won't leave me alone essentially, but to me, even if I go, let's just say like I go into the war perspective here for a second for those theists who are watching. Let's say I go see a psychologist, and then they I express to them all this whole thing, and then they're gonna be like, okay, these are conditions that you grew up with, since you were a child. Right. And you've been embedded in this ideology, and you've been indoctrinated in thinking that these things are there, but when they're not real. But for me, I have a hard time justifying even their standards when people say nothing exists and like all these things are illusion and all these things are whatever you make it up to be, whatever your mind conceives the reality to be, that's the true in their mind. But this is, for me, subjective mind, not the absolute mind, because the way how I feel, I come down to conclusions that if this is really true, if the reality is not the reality the way how we think it is, it should be the case for everybody, every person. And hence the reason why we shouldn't have religion in the first place, or even like countries having divisions and political chaos.
I'm tracking you, I think. You're saying go back to that last part, what you just said, because I'm trying to understand, because you're saying that there would be no use for religion, is what you're saying, under these circumstances?
No, I
don't
remember exactly what I just said,
okay.
But gosh, where were we? See, I have a hard time. I wish I could just play back and
hit the rewind button. Instant replay. I think we're getting on the topic of morality, in that you kind of see it as.
So for me, that's why I asked you that question earlier. It's like, is there absolute truth versus subjective truth? Right. And I loved your answer when you said absolutely, because in order to be absolute, you have to know it all, everything, and essentially the creation itself and what it likes to be, literally everything that we see with our eyes,
right?
You know, and even the mind and everything. But when it comes to morality, for me though, see, good and evil is it really is black and white in my head. And
yeah, it is. Sure, I'm not disagreeing that.
And I'm trying to use human logic, not the theistic realm, like the faith aspect. I'm trying to put that aside right now. You
Sure.
know what I mean? And I'm just, again, as an adult person, in the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't gone to church, and I've literally went to the world to really experience the whole argument between the Christians versus the world and scientific world. Like, and I pretty much studied every possible view and perspective that there is known to mankind. I like to think so.
Sure.
And I'm still on the journey.
Or at least a lot.
There's a lot. And
I'm
still on the journey where I'm discovering new things and I'm learning new things. But nonetheless, I'm on pretty. I'm still on a journey. Yeah. Right. Okay. But
we all are.
Yeah. But I still, again, come back to the thought of if. Gosh, there's so much, Ken. Like for instance, I know that I'm a human being, and I'm with a lot of flaws. I have tendencies that once you get to know me for a long time, that you will not like, and it goes vice versa. But sure, but like
We all have
I
our
know,
stuff.
yeah, I know myself, like in terms of like my insignificant side to myself. You know, I have some quirky personalities and things. You know, again, we all do, but like I can't stop thinking about God and evil all the time. Like,
In what context? So when you say that you think about it all the time, what boggles you? What is it that you're being most challenged by with those thoughts? Like, what entertains you about it? Is it your past? Is it something you, or is it more like something you are getting over, or is it something more like?
I don't think it has to do with any.
Right.
Any,
so it's more
past,
like.
but
Right. So it's not has nothing to do with you.
As an adult perspective.
Right. As a perspective of seeking truth and like trying to understand. I guess spiritual aspects of our human nature. Like, what is it that powers you to be so fascinated with God and evil?
I think it's the way it is when you really carefully observe the world. You know, you see it everywhere, and sometimes you see it bluntly, but sometimes they're very subtle. And the fact that, again, I'm going to go back to that, the mind, the body, consciousness, and the whole soul, spirit.
Sure.
When you consider that exists, and it's actually the real, right? We can't prove some of the metaphysical things, abstract world, to be true. We don't have a physical evidence of that, right? But we know that they exist. That there's a sense of our human nature knowing what a good action versus what a bad action is. Like we have this inherent moral compass that is built in us to know, right? Like
yes,
again,
but where that comes from, I think, is where we differ.
Very much so.
I think we can differ on that somewhat. I think you most likely believe that Earth was created by God, that a compass was put in all of us, and we get to decide whether or not we want to follow the compass or what direction we want to follow the compass. And ultimately, it's our free will that determines whether or not we end up at, suffering or paradise. That compass was put in us.
The reason why I say all this is because also I am not God, and I can comfortably say this as a human being. Like,
sure.
Again, I'm not disregarding what you said earlier about our conscience being God and we are all part of it, but it's like I'm a moral human being full of flaws and bad nature, essentially. I screw up in my mind. So it doesn't always have to be in my actions, right? But in my mind, if you just open up my little brain, and then if the mind could be observable, you'll see all kinds of weird and
sure. sinful things.
Sinful
so to speak.
things.
Sure.
I don't want to use that word, but yes.
No, but I used it because
yeah.
it's part of your experience.
And the world has to have a savior. And again, I don't want to go down this path, but let me sidetrack real quick. The fact that in even Hollywood you look at any history of books, it's got some ask of a savior that's going to save from the evil.
Well, Hollywood has little, I think it's such a good story. Like it's fundamentally built into our DNA, that story. Mm-hmm. And I think story itself is built into humans' DNA.
But in the story, the age-old, longest perhaps a story that is the story of good and evil. It really is when you think about it.
Oh yeah, no, I don't
think there's anything that surpasses that.
But I don't know how that proves any aspect of like biblical perspective. That because Hollywood has a bunch of movies that are good and evil based. If you're saying it's because humans are expressing in that way and naturally those ideas are coming from someplace within them in their compass, I can understand that perspective, yeah.
I brought up the Hollywood analogy because of, I'm just saying even human beings know and we long for some kind of a hero or savior-esque type of figure to come save the humanity.
Yes, and I will tell you that I have certain perspectives I consider for why that is, that probably aren't in alignment with most Christian perspectives. But let me ask you this, how old do you think Earth is?
So I'm a young Earth Christian.
You're a 6,000-year-old guy.
Yeah.
And so it's challenging because if that is such an inherent belief within you.
But it doesn't mean that I didn't go the other way and try to study the physics and then the
No, not even saying that, but I mean to consider the idea that that's hard. That's hard. It's challenging to have a conversation with the perspective that I might have. In a conversation that you would have, like our perspective that you would have.
I would love to hear it regardless.
Yeah.
Because and I hope you don't necessarily think of me as a young Earth, and so therefore he's only on a trajectory of mine can only be here, because young Earth versus billions of years age, that's a whole different spectrum. So
don't put that judgment on you. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with like, oh, he must believe this way and so we can't have a conversation. No. But that being said, one of the most valuable things about conversation is the exchange of ideas that once exchanged lends the person walking away from the conversation, lends them the opportunity to take some of that awareness, put that into them, integrate it into their paradigm, and change.
Sure.
I think that's what's great about conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
And we have, just feels like over time, our society has started shifting away from that. And it's more the dialogue, because it's not really a conversation, not an exchange of ideas. It becomes a dialogue to where these are my perspectives, these are yours. I'm going to talk to you and talk at you about my ideas.
We
and
can
you're
still
gonna
grab
do
a
the
beer
same.
after this.
No, for sure. No, but it's not even bad. But what I am saying is this. Because you're a 6,000-year-old Christian perspective, or what would you call it, like a young Earth theory, it becomes challenging to have those conversations because it's limiting to be able. It's limited because I think anybody with that deep of a belief system, where the belief system is inherently based on absolute suffering or absolute bliss, it's harder for them to truly consider ideas that would go against that doctrine, because that's that is the most huge. That's the most major.
So you were on the trajectory of talking about.
Well, let me finish this. So the stakes are so high, you cannot under any circumstance integrate information that isn't within the guidebook. If it's not in the guidebook, it can't be true, right? And so I had a friend recently who I was talking to, and we were having these conversations about spiritual knowledge and like consciousness and existence and all that. And he blatantly says at the end of the conversation, he goes, yeah, but none of this matters because after all this, at the end of this conversation, Jesus isn't your king. And it's like, Right, so everything has to come back to that religious perspective in the sense that if it doesn't end there, the conversation is meaningless. So there's nothing I can offer this person from my unique paradigm or my unique perspective that's going to be integrated into theirs. It can't. So it becomes challenging. And that's why religion, the old adage where it's like, don't ever discuss religion or politics with people.
I feel that you haven't really met with a Christian person who has the kind of perspective, wide perspective that you're looking for. And to be fair, I think some of these Christian folks that you may have been with or have talked with, maybe perhaps they're not educated in terms of the depth of the history of the Bible or the literacy of the Bible or the actual Bible itself, because Bible can be translated into many different format of a book. There's no book like Bible.
At the core of it, though, regardless of how many times it can be interpreted, at the core of it, there's still the foundation of faith. You have to believe that the book itself is written by God itself as a manual and guideline for all humanity to follow, and the purpose of that book is so that humanity can reach heaven. That in itself is already the starting block for like, well, now it's hard to have a conversation because, again, the stakes are so high.
So I'm coming to you from perspective like this. I fully understand what you're saying, and trust me, because I went to the other extreme side to understand what you're saying. But I'm also, if I'm speaking for theists right now, is that theists by themselves, to those who are truly in the realm of theology and truly in the realm of like actively living the right Christian life, I should say, and
according to the Bible, right?
According to the Bible, I mean, but this guy's extremely. There's way more to this, Ken. That I feel like we need to have we'll have more sessions like this. I'm totally enjoying.
And Christianity may be something we should, or just religion itself is something we should get off of, because I feel like we can get into that forever.
Yeah. But by their perspective, right, the theist.
My old perspective.
They're saying, no matter, even if you go into that realm of, spirituality, and which, and also integrating with the possibility of infinity, or the realm of infinity, I should say, the possibility just becomes endless in terms of what is true, what is reality, and this and that, which is totally fine, but still, it's gonna have to come back to some kind of a foundational standard in which you can anchor your knowing what is reality and what is, you know what I mean?
I think I do, but I don't agree. I don't understand why it would have to do anything, and who says it has to. Time may be infinite. It may never stop. It also may be circular, and it may not even be real. You have no idea. You have no idea. We don't know what this is. None of us do. And anyone who tells you that they do, beyond a shadow of a doubt, be thankful, because now you can know you don't have to believe what they say, because they don't know. And that is what's fascinating to me. And I say that because the things we think we know beyond a shadow of a doubt are typically the things we have no idea about. Like when you sit here and you go, I'm sitting on this chair right now, I'm having a conversation with you. Yeah, there's truth in that. But again, when you go down to the subatomic level, I'm not even sitting on this chair. Turns out that the electrons in my genes in my ass are repelling the electrons in this chair, and I'm hovering above it. But from this perspective, it does not appear that way. So it's like, to think that something has to come back to a certain way, or a certain foundation or foundation point or anchor point to go, okay, now we can make sense of this, is a very human perspective, it feels like. It's a very human need to make sense of something that may not make the same kind of sense we want it to make, or we think it makes. But we got to reconcile that. And I think that's what a lot of religion over the years can become. Not to say that religion's bad, because I think religion is an element of humanity's evolution that has helped and assisted lifting us in our evolution. But I do think that with any paradigms need to change from time to time. And to some extent, old points of view may be so integrated into our knowledge that we are ready to move on from certain perspectives.
I just want to also say this: the Pantheism, right? The Confucianism, the Taoism, the Buddhism. These, if you look at historically, they were more prominent and they were considered to be founded after the timeline of Christ. So it's credited as like around 5 or 6 BC if you look it up, like factually.
From a Christian's perspective.
No.
But what I'm saying is, from a Christian perspective.
But this is also from a literacy standpoint, like
I will get it. What I'm saying from a Christian perspective, that would lend to the idea that because Christianity came first, that's the foundation. Everything that's come afterwards is the result of misthinking. Whereas somebody else could say, maybe Christianity was first, and then these ideas were the evolution of humans in their mind. That maybe we needed this as the foundation to start, and now that has propelled us to ideas that may have opened us up to, those ideas may have opened us up to higher concepts and higher ideas, and we couldn't get here first without here. So I understand the Christian perspective where it says, but Catholicism came first. We're the universal church. This is it. Started with Peter. Like, I get those perspectives, but again, in the context of like every religion or any ideas that's come after that are incorrect, has no bearing really, except from a Christian perspective.
But what about this idea? Okay, let's go and talk about this perspective. Getting into that other side of the age of Earth. So let's just say scientific age of Earth. Let's just go into the realm of like billions or whatever years old.
Sure.
Okay. Even that carbon dating is not truly. I mean, it's not 100% accuracy or anything that predates or get into that realm of millions to billions of years old. Trying to observe that past historically.
Sure.
For me, I have a harder time accepting that. Factually speaking, that than for like, let's say like a creation coming into existence within this 6,000 period of time.
I think 6,000 limits us greatly. And I understand why Christians believe in the 6,000 year idea. If I'm not mistaken, it has to do with.
Other Christians also are like around 10,000, 12,000. There's a whole spectrum of this.
Doesn't the idea come from like the first chapter of Matthew, I think? Or
so the way how they figure out Age of Earth is they backtrack from the New Testament all the way to the Old Testament, because it states all these Old Testament. There's in the Genesis it talks about like the Adam, to Noah, to Abraham, and like all the sons in between. It listed all the names, so that's how they calculate the Age of Earth.
Because I've also heard, maybe it's not Matthew, but I've also heard there's a book that takes the lineage from like Adam and Eve, and then says they begat this person, that begat this person, that begat this person, that begat this person, that begat this person. That gets you to Jesus. There's a whole, like it's like from what I remember, it's the first page of
Adam to Noah, and Noah to Abraham.
But I mean, it's one of the, like from what I remember, it's like an actual first page of one of the Gospels. It's just like, so this is how it all started.
I
People
think it's
go,
John.
there it is,
sure
right.
John, yeah.
And yet some humans live longer, like Noah lived for like 900 years or something like that, like, which makes no sense to us now as humans. But outside of that we do have about 2,000 years of history. We know that. So, I mean...
Well, when Jesus was present in this earth, we have recordings of the times of Roman Empire, correct?
Yeah, so I mean,
using
all of that's all real. I'm not discounting that Jesus wasn't a real person. I just think Jesus may be something more far profound than what Christians believe him to be. And that...
I also understand the realm of Billy Carson's and Zachariah Hitchens, those realms of like, because, Billy kind of really goes very, what the theists will call it the heretic way of, because he says that Jesus, he's basically the version of the Horus god, the Anunnakis, and those ancient civilizations, and that he's coming from that lineage of like the teachings and that stuff.
Who knows if any of that's legit. Like I think Billy Carson is a pretty intelligent guy, and he's put together a lot of interesting information. He's had a quick rise, and I like a lot of the things he says.
Have you looked up his bio or like his background?
Not a whole lot. But I don't do bios, I don't do backgrounds, and I don't do statuses, because I think unless someone's some hardcore Satanist or something, or, or has some sort of hardcore belief, and then they're coming at it from that perspective. But, information's information, and it's going to enter my paradigm, and it will be received how it will be received by me. But going back to what I was saying too, I'm kind of on that subject about Jesus specifically within history and whatnot, but I don't discount that he's real at all. I think he very much was real. But I do consider the idea very strongly that he's something more powerful than what Christians believe him to be. And that sometimes sits funny with people. Because if Jesus really did the things that he did, let's say he really did do these miracles and people were witness to it, and he was this spiritual philosopher and this teacher that was telling people how to be better and all this kind of thing, in that context, if that's true and those things are real, people will go, well, that's the proof he's God. And I would go, I don't know that it's that. I think you may be witness to a being that mastered the human and now is entering a metaphysical reality, physically incarnated, and is now able to consciously interact with this realm in a way that we would see as non-human. And that is powerful, because his whole message was not do these things to survive. It was these things you shall do and more. He was telling us how to be so that we can achieve what Jesus achieved. That's what I tend to consider Jesus' message to be. And if he did do those things, that's powerful. And then it lends to the idea, in somewhat of a conspiratorial tone, that if he was able to do that and he figured out that path, powers that be would not necessarily want that to be known, and that his message could potentially be purposefully, I don't want to say messed with, but changed somewhat to be more in alignment with an establishment perspective at the time, whoever was writing. Because you also think about the people that were writing and reading back then. It was a lot easier to manipulate information. But I think his message was most likely manipulated. Am I wrong? Am I right about that? I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert in that, but I do claim to be an expert in being a human, because we all are. And that does make sense to me. But going back to the age thing, it's like we've got 2,000 years of history. And it seems, I don't know, it doesn't seem like dinosaurs and any of that sort of thing that, it doesn't seem like that would have existed within that time period. Because now they're starting to say that they're finding ancient civilizations buried underground that are pushing the envelope for what even science thought was possible. So advanced civilizations 29,000 years ago. I
didn't want to open up that can of worm in terms of the complexity of different worldviews and what is still yet to be discovered type of thing. Sure. That realm. I didn't want to go down there yet, but. Seems like we're sort of headed that way, but.
Well, if you want to stay more on metaphysical concepts, I think that's pretty easy. That's pretty simple. Then religion can be such a hot button issue, and everyone's definitions have to be kind of in alignment before you can kind of go forward. And there's other things when it comes to religion, I talk to people and I say, so God created us, made us. And I'm like, yeah, God made us. And okay, gives us the option for heaven or hell. And they say, yes. And I say, okay, well, we can mess up and end up going to hell. And they're like, yeah, we're all his children. That's how it works. And it's from that perspective, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I want you to think about the person you love the most, that you would die for, that you would do anything for. Under what circumstance would you allow them, as an infant, you're in charge of them, to be put into a room with a maze that will take them 60 years to get through, where on the end is absolute torture and punishment, or on the other end is finding you once more?
If not human beings having free will, free thinking, to the actual material way of making our decisions, right? What else is there? Like we're not a robotic beings for sure. We know this. I mean, we're trying to make robots
I don't know,
by
but to
creating
me,
AI,
Christian
right?
perspectives kind of make us robotic. And I say that because what can you do outside of the knowledge of God? What action can you commit to where God can't see it?
Say that one more time.
What action can you commit that God is unaware of, that God doesn't know about, that God goes, well,
none.
Paul got me there. I had no idea Paul was going to do that. Because he knows everything you're going to do, right?
Yes.
So if he knows everything you're going to do, are there multiple versions of you that exist? Because if there's not, essentially, Charles Manson was born and died and clearly went to hell according to Christian perspective. Charles Manson was created to cause terror on earth, die, and burn in hell for existence. Why would God do that? Did Charles Manson have the opportunity to go to heaven? Then why? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't mean, I don't think it
In a
means that
linear
he was
time
determined from the beginning of creation that he was going to be that evil person, you know? I don't think so. I think we have the choice, just like a love is a choice, right? We actively have, oh gosh, that's a whole nother fascinating topic.
So there's
there,
parallel
right?
dimensions of you that exist that could
Okay,
possibly, there's parallel opportunities
by the way,
for you.
there aren't many podcasters who are willing to mix all these ideologies together, which is great. We're doing it, but you're bringing right now this multiverse essentially within the realm of the conscious realm, like in that perspective, along with now intermixing with
like the moment God makes you, He knows how it's going to end. But what options do you have on earth to turn that around? And if you do have options, God knows all the options, knows all the outcomes. It doesn't make any sense. And a linear, one line of existence doesn't make any sense. Because every person that's ever gone to hell was created and went to hell. And to tell me that they could have gotten to heaven doesn't make sense. Because how could they do something that God wasn't aware of?
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't, I mean, I'm not articulating it.
No, this is great.
I've had this conversation specifically more times and I've had more ideas that I brought up, but just in general sense, it doesn't make as much sense unless you can tell me that there's alternate versions of yourself that you could become, but then that means that God doesn't know which way it's going to go. See, it doesn't make sense. The logic, as you went back, you were so excited to discuss earlier, ain't logicking. That math ain't mathing. It just doesn't.
There is a realm in mathematics where even mathematicians would go like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. That realm actually is there, but I'm not too knowledgeable there yet, but I do know that exists. And same with a little bit in the realm of philosophy, and even like kind of where we are. We're sort of like hybridizing all these ideologies together. It seems so, Well, I'm mainly still more theistic, but you have a very different.
It's just the logical like when you start to pour a little bit of logic into that belief system, a lot of things can fall apart very quickly.
Have you ever heard of fallen angels before?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And
the Nephilim and all that.
Nephilim, yeah, I'm sure you know.
Sure.
And then this book of
the Watchers and
the Watchers, the Apocrypha, and etc. So
familiar with all that.
When that's the whole purpose of the whole flood, Noah's flood. But again, I understand also when people say, "Oh, every civilization had their own great flood" and stuff like that. But I don't want to go down to that rabbit hole just yet.
The flood's interesting just because multiple places separated by space and time have stories about it.
That's a whole other thing. Okay, let's backtrack. So when these beings interbred with human beings, they created, what's known as giants, which is
hybrid people, hybrid consciousness, or hybrid beings.
And there's actually a lot to this that really intrigued me. It intrigues a lot of people, and this is actually a very huge, growing niche or topic in the internet. A lot of people are fascinated with this realm, by the way.
It's interesting.
It's growing. Anyway, so when you say about the whole family breeding with each other, I mean, there's like we question that, and I question it. A lot of my Christian friends, we question that too. But according to that one apologist, he was basically saying, the genetic genes were more pure and I don't know, something along that line where I know
mean, I get it, but again, that's literally going against Christian doctrine. Christian doctrine says it's not in the Bible. Then you don't believe it. You're just making this up to make your perspective fit your belief. And that's fine, no judgment. I'm not saying that, I'm saying anybody. Like anybody who does that, I'm not judging you on that. But that is what's happening. You're taking logical information, like you're using your own version of logic or within the parameters of your religion to make your religion work so that your paradigm can be happy. And it's like, doesn't say that in there, that there were more pure genes. And if it did, maybe we'd go, oh, okay, sure, I guess that's something. But what makes more sense, you know what I mean, is that maybe this is an allegory. Maybe this is a story. Maybe we're supposed to learn something in the ancient ways of how stories used to be told and how they still are a lot of times.
So that discussion about should we take the Bible literally or as a more metaphorically, that topic is actually very popular amongst Christian people as well. If you
yeah, I mean, I know. I was Christian, I was, and that's a big reason why, as I shifted away from those perspectives and started to embrace more of my experiences with spirituality and things like that, my own psychic stuff.
But can I just say, if we are self-beings, we're chasing after our own experiences and our own knowledge or our own satisfaction, I guess, to whatever it satisfies us, about the answers that we're looking for.
Sure.
We could just continue on with this perpetual cycle of non-ending,
Of non-ending?
Yeah.
What's that?
Just like, it's like
well, you do that anyway, though. You do that anyway.
Yes.
That's why you're sitting here right now.
Yeah.
You're a filmmaker because you want to be. You have a girlfriend because you want to have a girlfriend. You eat the sandwich because you want the sandwich. I mean, on some level, we're always seeking satisfaction or what we want for ourselves. So if you're thinking in terms of like how you view the world or your own existence, then I think you're getting at the point of like, what do you base that on? Like, so you base it on the Bible, and this is the foundation from which I jump from, which for me, I base it on my spiritual experience of reality itself. And that has led me to places where I go, well, the only thing that's logical that makes sense from what I can experience is A, B, or C. And that's integrating religion and philosophy and science. And, I don't know. I think that's what you're getting at.
Do you ever doubt?
Ever doubt? Oh, I think doubt's healthy. You got to doubt. If you don't doubt, you just become the guy who's on the corner with the bullhorn yelling at people, telling everyone why they're living their life wrong. Like, doubt is healthy.
Why do you think?
But I think that my percentage of doubt has gone down over the years. But I always try to see myself truthfully as best I can.
We think that we arrive to a place of sincere reality, or factually what is to be real, whatever that form may be, right, for each and different individuals.
Say that again?
But
like we arrive at a place where reality is real?
In our minds, like, because everybody seems to have a different definition of what reality is, or what.
Because that is what's reality.
But
no.
Don't you think this is like a little bit?
You're talking about a one single objective reality that exists and that we all are a part of.
Yes.
That doesn't exist.
But
doesn't
I still
exist.
think it has to, because if all of our every individual reality is what those individuals make it out to be, then literally, again, that defeats the whole purpose of the grand spectrum. Like, there has to be some sort of like a grounding reality in which, again, for me, this is the physical earth right now. Like,
when you say there has to be, you mean it from like a foundational point of view. It's like, no, without some honest, absolute truth, none of this makes sense. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying more like in a cultural way?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm going to go and anchor it back down to God's perspective, obviously, right? But for me, again, this is difficult. And
the fundamentals of reality physics is that your version of the universe is completely different than my version of the universe.
I get that.
Not one single person is the same.
Right, I get that.
That's more true than anything you can believe in. No, listen to that. Because the actual foundations of what belief is very different than knowing that truth. When you believe in something, you choose to go, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to put faith into this. You know the answer to this reality I just said. I live in a completely different universe than you do.
But we still live in the collective society what's called an Earth.
So you got a bunch of universes walking around bumping into each other with all different perspectives. That's it.
But who knows if the multiverse is really true or
not?
No,
I'm not talking about multiverses. You are your own universe. You're your own experience in totality. Your viewpoint is completely different than my viewpoint on every single level because you're Paul and I'm Ken. Everyone does that. There's not one person that shares the same point of view. You may be in alignment with other people with certain perspectives. I believe this. I do too, but even those two beliefs aren't 100% the same. Everyone is different. That's more true than anything you can believe. That's the closest thing you can come to at... Here's another thing. Let me put it to you this way. You're having an experience, right? You can prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's the one thing you know beyond all shadow of a doubt is you're having an experience, right? You know what that experience is. You see me. You assume I'm having my own experience, which is probably an accurate thing to assume.
Right.
But you can't prove to yourself that I exist the way you can prove to yourself that you exist. I could just be a part of a simulation like every single thing else around you, and you're the only thing that exists. And you can't prove that to yourself, that that's not true. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, you can't prove to yourself you're the only thing that exists on Earth. You can't. That in itself is cause for attention. The way that you can prove to yourself that you exist, you can't prove to yourself that anything else exists the same way. Why? That is fascinating. That is cause for attention. You could literally be God that created this whole thing for yourself so you would forget that you're God. And every single thing you interact with is just a video game, and you would never know the difference. You wouldn't. You can't prove yourself. You can't prove that to yourself.
But do you truly believe that?
Doesn't matter what I believe. The logic is there. I don't believe in any of it. I don't believe in anything.
How can we... There has to be a setting foundational something that we can truly...
See, what you're doing right now is you're getting into the mind. You're getting into the head. You're getting into the need to know and understand and have a foundation from which to jump. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just observing.
Any debater, like on an intellectual college level or whatever academic level, come with their own point of view and argue and say, none of that would be real too. Then
all of that aside, what I just said is inherent. There's inherent truth in that. There's factual accuracy to that. That's a factual statement. You can't prove to yourself that I exist the way you can prove to yourself that you exist.
I
that
get
in
that.
itself is cause for attention because that says something about your own reality and my reality if I exist.
But I'm still saying outside of our own realities and our own perception to an individualistic mindset of what this reality is, we're all part of some kind of a platform or staged reality where that is more real than even the reality that we are experiencing, because this is for me
from Paul's perspective.
No, but oh gosh, this is good. But Ken,
I do tend to consider, I strongly consider the idea of the grand orchestration, as I refer to it as.
Yes.
The grand
orchestration. That's what I'm trying to refer as, and this is the reason why I suppose the world's on fire right now with, on internet or whatever actual piece of lands and stuff like that. That's why wars exist. That's why religious, views and political views, and this is
from the human perspective. It's awful. It's a terrible place to live. Everything's filled with lies. You don't know who to trust. It's deceit, power grabs, murderous rage among powerful elites, There's starving people, there's child sex slavery, there's rape and all sorts of cultures that make money off of those sorts of things, like that exists.
So doesn't all this call for...
From that perspective. But I think on some higher perspective, we're witnessing the birth pains of a consciousness revolution on a spiritual level that goes beyond this realm.
But you still have to,
be in this earth.
Yes.
Right.
Rather we want to be part of it, rather you want to deny it, or whatever you want to call it to be, right?
There's no denying it.
We're all part of this. Like the timeline of essentially our physical bodies being part of this sun going down, sun coming up, this 7 day out of the week.
I mean, that itself is important
days,
to consider. Like, if you can consider all these ideas and get to all these points of views and receive all this information and figure all these major philosophical things out, and yet you still have to go and take a shit, like, I'm being as crass as I can on purpose.
Yes.
Like, you still have to do human stuff, right?
What's not grounding about
relative experience of that is beautiful. There's beauty in that. There's purpose in that. And purpose to me also is opportunity. It's not God-given purpose, even though it most likely is. But, we live in these, we have to still be human. We still have to pay the bills. We still have to do that. And all of that is beautiful, because even amongst the wars and all the terrible things that happen to us, it's a place of learning. We're learning something, we're gaining something, we're receiving something in our lives, and it's necessary. But you got to have both, and you have to have both. Like, it's the nature of this realm.
I suppose this battle will continue to rage on, Ken. I know I'm a theistic view, and I still very much am, but I also am trying to see it in a global perspective. This is not just me having this, obviously, and there are people who...
There are 8 billion perspectives on this planet. Which one's right? And let's go further. How do you handle other planets? Do you believe in other planets? Do you believe in aliens? Do you consider the idea of consciousness existing on supposedly the multitude of planets that exist, or is that all not real?
In terms of, like, in the realm of physics, I suppose, the realm of infinity is possibility.
Yeah, so right? you got humans and a bunch of other planets. Do they have Jesus? Do they have a different Jesus?
So that we will never know, in my opinion. This is like one of those realms. I think it's...
But again, you're not meant to know. It's not the answer you're seeking, it's the question. And not to bolster the matrix, but it's true. The question is what opens you up to that reality. When you go, well, what about other planets? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, but is there...
But there's power in that.
But like, how do we really, really know if that were to be the case? You know what I mean?
Well,
there's that aspect.
Right, and so is that the case? And if it's not, what's the alternative? The Earth's the only thing that exists.
Yeah.
That seems bizarre to me. That doesn't seem as accurate as, like...
What if there is a limitation to the universe then? What if
Very well could be. Yeah. Also, there's the idea that we may be the first to evolve. The universe may be this old and we're the first to get here. Could be. Think about that. All those planets out there, humans are the first bipedal humanoid type being to get to the point where we are. That's possible. But that also doesn't seem accurate. Doesn't feel right. But again, I don't know. But it's the questions that you line up that ultimately help to build the paradigm. When people start answering the questions that can't be answered, shake their hand and be thankful for them, because they're full of shit. That's it. Like, no one knows anything. No one knows what this is. I don't discount Christianity. It's such a, you're in a box. And I'll be honest with you, as a friend, I'm like, don't put this on the internet, but as a friend, I know where you are. Because in order for me to get to where I am in my own personal journey, that's a box I had to knock the doors down on. And once I did, I was no longer Christian, not because of my own choosing, like, I don't want to be Christian.
Can I ask you a personal question?
But listen, yeah.
Would you be disappointed if I kept my theistic view for the rest of my life?
Why would I be disappointed about that? I'd have no disappointment about that. That's your journey. It's your journey. It's not mine.
To furthermore, have you ever thought about what if your perspective perhaps was wrong, and maybe really the God of the Bible was real, but in fact people have misrepresented it?
Yeah, 100%.
And
that's a consideration that I make. I think about that because of how strong my Christian programming was.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something that's still not on my mind on occasion.
Is it really programming though?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're born, you don't know anything about it, unless you believe that you're meant to learn about it. And then if you were always going to learn about it.
But earlier, like some of the stuff we talked about earlier, is like some of the things that we don't know what is to be true and this and that. There's a healthy speculation in that aspect. But when it comes to Christianity, like ask of programming, why is it such a strong belief there?
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again?
So like earlier we were talking about some of the aspects of like, you know, there's so many possibilities and things like we don't know, right? You know,
for sure.
Right? But when it comes to the ask of Christianity, like, oh, we're programmed. Like, how do you know if that's completely true?
It's programmed because it's information that's put into you with great stakes. And so the stakes are so great that you can't self-discover any of the information on your own. Somebody else says, all this outside information is what you need to know. Here's the gift. Follow it specifically. If you don't, burn in hell. Like, that's programming. Now, I'm not being
way.
I'm not being disrespectful. Sometimes I will be that bold and crass just to really illustrate the point. But the concept is this: any information that you learn, that someone's telling you, and then changes you, is a form of programming. Now, programming is not inherently negative. Like, if you learn baseball, you've been programmed about baseball. But the difference is, when the stakes are so high that it involves something you can't even prove that's real, which is your soul. You know, from a scientific point of view, maybe we are just meat bags walking around until we die and it's over. And that in order to gain access to this beautiful place afterwards, you have to follow these instructions very specifically. That perspective, once believed, is going to put you into a place and walk you on a path that's going to be very specific. And you're not going to ever walk off that path, even if your heart was interested in it. If you were interested in it, you might call it sin. You might call it the devil making you do it. Those things that you might be curious about, you may not explore because the teaching has taught you not to. Ultimately, that's a form of programming. And I don't mean programming in a negative way. It's just, it is programming. Now, I think there's a difference between self-discovery and learning information from someone else who tells me what the truth is. If I discover truth on my own versus someone else telling me what to believe as truth, that's a different experience. And I think one is programming and one is not. Self-programming is better than being programmed, in my perspective. But again,
I don't trust yourself in that sense. What if I present it that way?
What else can you trust but yourself? What else is there to know truthfully? We just said earlier, the only thing you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that you have an experience. That's the only thing you can trust. Everything else is,
I mean,
you know,
for those who have mental disability,
sure,
that's completely different reality.
Yeah.
So,
but the reality is no less.
Individualistic experience and belief cannot be the foundational for the collective society of entire human species.
That's because I think you're still in the realm of belief. You need to believe. I don't believe. I don't believe in anything. I'm a witness. I'm an observer. And I take in as much as I can to formulate a paradigm through which I choose to express my being. Do I believe there's something beyond this? I strongly consider it. Strongly.
Do you think about that often? Throughout the day?
It's my whole life.
Yeah.
That's why I'm weird.
Well, I'm in that trajectory too. But I come to conclusion, you know.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with belief and faith. I think that I am often faithful. I often do have beliefs, you know, but not, I'm very cautious about building a belief system that guides my life in such a way that there are consequences against my actions within the context of the belief system. That I don't, how am I trying to say this? Why don't we get to more of the metaphysical stuff? I feel like we've been on religion for so long, and it's like, I think we would have more fun if we just like got into the nerdy stuff. Like we do it like
Sure. Okay.
I don't know, it's like, the other thing about it too is when you put that online, there's some things that are good to talk about, but immediately your audience is going to go, okay,
like
disagree with this guy, why do I disagree with him? Instead of the conversation, whereas like a lot of the other topics they'll hear, and they might be more more willing to integrate that information.
I also am open to the idea, I talked to my guest about this, but like, I'm always willing to put the entire take, right?
Yeah.
Plus the shortcuts of like the short form content, because those are the golden bite stuff that we.
Yeah, I just would say when you go to edit that religious stuff, be real gentle and real.
I will also come
willing
to you
cut,
before I
just because
make anything public. So.
Just don't want anyone, and some of the things I was saying, I was like, my head's kind of getting tired or whatever, and I'm going, I know what I'm trying to say here, but it's not working. And
sure.
You know, I don't want anyone to come across like I'm some guy who's like, religion's wrong and Christianity's stupid. I don't feel any of that stuff. So anyway, what's the next question?
Okay. When you look at your own younger self or younger person, it's clear that many haven't found themselves. I think it's safe to say a lot of people haven't found their identity in this world yet. Why do you think so?
I mean, I feel like in some ways I'm one of those guys, to be open and honest and vulnerable. I think sometimes I struggle with, who I am in this world. But I think also there's an imbalance too, where people put too much emphasis on their identity, and I think you're kind of seeing that now in culture, where everything's becoming kind of tribalistic again, where it's like, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm in this group, and this is who I identify as. Losing your identity is one of the first foundational aspects of spiritually awakening and enlightenment to some degree. And enlightenment's such a kind of a cliche word. I don't really like to use it as much. Because I think once you know there's a difference to know who you are versus identifying as a person. Because I think the identity is very ego-based. I'm an artist, I'm a this, I'm a that. So in my head, I'm following who I need to be based upon those ideas of who I am. Because all of that takes place in the head. But knowing who you are takes place in the heart. And knowing who you are is the kindness that you give your wife, or the spending time with children, or helping the deer cross the road who's injured, or picking up a turtle on the road so it doesn't get run over. Like, that's who you are. That's what you are. It's not your identity, And identity is all based in the mind. But the truth of what you are is based in action and in your heart.
So do you think most people in this world are good rather than evil?
Again, I'm not a big good and evil guy, but in the context of that, I think
they're a good person.
I think all of consciousness and all of existence in its most pure form is love, compassion, empathy, and gratitude. I think those vibrations of existence are the foundational building blocks of all that exists. And every single negative experience or vibration that is possible, that being evil or anything what we would consider to be negative, is a derivative of love, which sounds counterintuitive, but as you get into it, it makes sense. That hate and anger and frustration and evil and all of that is a production of love in order to facilitate experiences that help consciousness to grow. Yeah.
You ever get lonely?
I'm a weird guy. I don't get lonely often. Lonely is not something I experience a lot. I'm pretty content being by myself, but I think that is a result of my awakening experience and having that strong inner dialogue with that level of my consciousness that always makes me feel like I've got someone there And not saying like I hang out with an imaginary friend or anything like that, but there is an aspect of, there's a level of grounding that takes place in having that connection to spirit, to soul, in such a way that I feel whole enough when I'm alone. On occasion, do I get like a little lonely? Like, I haven't seen anybody in a while. Like, been editing all day, and like, I don't know, I miss you guys. Yeah, of course. But I think some people suffer from loneliness in a much deeper way that I couldn't call lonely.
I mean it in a sense of, in this world, like there are levels of loneliness too.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this level of loneliness in terms of like the kind of spiritual level you're in, and also your intellectual level, and not many people are there, you know? And so, and you don't have that one friend who sees the way you are entirely, you know? Maybe you have some friends who agree with you 80, 90%, you know, but no like a high 90s or 100%, I would say, you know?
Yes,
and so,
I know. So in regards to that, I think I have felt that in the past, especially when I first woke up. So when I first woke up, I was so excited learning all this information and was delving into like the new age world at that time, because that was the newest thing to me that I was trying to understand. And then a few years after that, after I sort of got really connected to my higher consciousness and interacting with those ideas and sort of disseminating that information among my friends and people, and you know, you get feedback that you don't like during that time period, because you're like, why don't you care more about this? Why isn't this important to you? And during that time, I did feel lonely. But it took me a few years to realize a lot of that response to that specific stimulus, them doing that, was really just my ego. Like, it was such an egoic thing to be sad and frustrated and lonely because I didn't feel that someone else was on the same level where we could have this conversation. And as I grew out of that, I just recognized my own gratitude for the experiences I do have, and that when I talk to people, everyone's at the same level. Everyone's an aspect of consciousness, an aspect of God. And if someone's not awakened to those ideas consciously in human form, they're just doing other things in their own spiritual experience that's important to them. And so I interact with them on that level. I interact with anyone on that level. Not this idea of like, oh, I know some stuff and you don't. Like, so frustrating that you won't get on this level of consciousness. That's incredibly egoic, and I have had that experience before. But now I just see everyone for who and what they are, which is the same exact thing as me. It really is. Like, it really
early in the car, I asked you
that
this
way.
interesting question. I said, do you think everyone can come to this realization that there is more to this world than just the physical world, and that spiritual world does exist, and that if someone can have a spiritual awakening?
Well, again, this is where we get into definitions. I don't necessarily believe in a spiritual world, so to speak, because I think there's probably only one giant, massive world, and we're only able to see a certain part of what exists as the incarnation of humanity. And I think it's important to make that change, because I don't see this life and the afterlife. I don't see it as that. I think all of the consciousness that exists in what you would call the spirit world exists in the exact same space and time as we do. But for example, like on the electromagnetic spectrum, we know there's this much light that exists, but humans can only see this much. There's this much sound that exists, can only hear this much. There's all these microwaves and all this radiation, but we can only experience this much. I think to that analogy, the spirit realm, physical realm is that. You're just in a very thin threshold of what you can experience when you're in human form. And there's purpose in that. There's intention in that, I think. It's designed to be, you don't get to experience the totality of everything because you're wanting to do this for yourself right now. So to that, you asked me, do I think that other people will wake up to the spirit realm, so to speak?
Or I should rephrase it. I should say, would other people have the experience where their consciousness awakes to this
higher consciousness,
higher
right?
consciousness?
All of that.
Yeah.
I think everything that will ever exist, that ever could exist, will. Everything that's ever going to be in existence does. I think that's the whole purpose of this whole thing. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just my intuition around what it is. Will they do it in this lifetime, like in the next 80 years? Will a child who dies by the time they're 13 have that experience? Probably not. Will a person who lives to be 120 have that experience? Possibly not. Will they have it in some perceived future or past lifetime? Maybe. But
then why is it that so little people are actually willing to go deep in this higher conscious state of mind or the spiritual world as we speak? Majority of the population and the people on Earth as we speak, I mean, arguably factually speaking, most people don't want to talk about these deep conversations, and they're completely fine, content with settling at home, eating potato chips and watching Netflix all day, watching shows like us.
I know what you're getting
at. You know
what
I'm talking about?
No, I know what you're getting at. I mean, I think, respectfully, I think there's truth in what you're saying, but I also think it's reductive, to be like, there's a sense of frustration of like, well, these people are eating potato chips and watching Netflix. What you're getting at is there's a good amount of human consciousness that is expressing, hey, what's up, man? There's a good amount of human consciousness that's expressing in a way that seems to limit themselves from that higher realm, that higher consciousness of experience and thinking. So to that, we kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. If reincarnation is real, and you are a soul on multidimensional level, and that you are incarnating into human experiences, the human experience you have in a particular life maybe is designed for some sort of awakening within the soul. But that specific experience may not be designed in this lifetime for you to wake up to the totality of all of existence in some higher way. Maybe in this lifetime, it's for you to discern, like to learn love. Maybe it's for the theme of your life is to learn about loss. Maybe you don't ever come near a Bible or come near consciousness topics and discussions and that kind of thing. So the whole point of it is there's this idea where people think that some people are ahead of people, like, oh, I know all this information and I'm spiritually aware and you're not, so I must be ahead of you. And it's like someone who's incarnated right now who has nothing to do with ideas of consciousness may be far ahead of you in the totality of evolution. But they chose to come here to cut themselves off from that with purpose. And there could just be a group of us that are like, we're done. We're coming to it. We're getting ready to graduate. We're moving on to something different, like in the show Lost, for example. That could be it. But some of us aren't ready to move on because they don't want to. I don't know. But I think that there's nothing wrong with people not awakening to my standard or your standard or some general idea of the way people should awaken. I don't believe in that. I don't think about that.
How about this another interesting take here. There's a saying that you can't have multiple views, particularly about the world views, and they all be true.
I don't necessarily buy into that. I don't. I think if you look at Christianity and you look at Judaism and you look at aspects of the Muslim religion or Islam, you look at Eastern philosophies, Eastern religions, you can find all sorts of overlapping themes. So I don't know that they all can't have truth within them. Now, if you're looking for absolute factual accuracy, truth, and you're wanting to know the absolute truth of the universe, again, it comes back to you don't get to know. You can't, not until you're God. God itself, an omniscient, all-present, all-knowing consciousness that sees and knows every moment of every second.
Why do we have to become like God in itself to know what is absolute truth? or not.
Because you can't know absolutely. Paul, you can't know absolute truth.
Couldn't you? You could still see like this massive tree that's in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
and then use that as a standard for the shade that it's giving from a harsh sunlight.
Sure.
You know? And so.
Well, what's the analogy? Hit me with the analogy of the tree, because I'll play the tree game. Let's do the tree game.
Okay. Well,
hit me with the analogy.
The tree as a, like God, by definition.
Sure.
And again, because there are so many interpretations and beliefs about God, and the perspective varies, it's difficult to exactly articulate what I'm wanting to say.
Sure. But it sounds like you're saying like tree. That's a physical.
Okay,
that's a
so
thing.
for me,
like we can see it. That's true. It's real. I know that, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying you know absolute truth now because you can see the tree.
I'm saying I can't know it entirety of what absolute truth.
Then
no
you
one
don't.
can. No one can, because God,
Right,
no one can
you can't know
comprehend
absolute
God.
truth.
No one can comprehend God.
Right. You know an aspect of
all
absolute
I'm saying
truth.
is that you can, like, if a giant tree is there, let's just say right there, which it is, I know that it is there. You know what I mean? Like, you can see it, and everybody also around me that can see it. You know.
Right. So so now everyone's going, the tree's there. We know that that's an aspect of absolute truth, right?
Yeah.
But you can't produce oxygen. You don't take in carbon dioxide.
Well, yeah, of course.
You don't know what it's like to be connected to other trees. You don't know what it's like to feel the bark and feel the squirrel inside of you.
What I'm saying,
right.
Again,
and I know what you're saying.
I tend to lean towards this too, and the question was, you can't have all of these different intricate beliefs about pretty much everything, and they all come to like a truth. You know what I mean? Like
I completely and totally disagree.
Yes, and I know why you disagree.
And to that point, there are 8 billion perspectives on this planet living truth.
Yes.
What you're wanting to say is, whose truth is factually accurate? That's what you're searching for. You're looking for factual accuracy.
But there has to be a sense of some kind of a non-changing, because human beings, we change. Our belief system changes too. Our belief system can change. Our personality can change.
Science would say the closest. Here's the thing. You can't know absolute truth. You can know truth because you're an aspect of absolute truth, and you're expressing that truth consistently. You know truth, but to find absolute truth, what you're saying is you're trying to find the factually accurate path that leads you to the tree. That's what you're looking for. And you're saying your path to the tree is the most accurate and known one. It is the path of truth. There are 8 billion people on Earth, and there's only a certain percentage that believe your path to the tree is the accurate one. There are scientists that say, well, from my experience, the most accurate path to absolute truth is this. And a Christian says, well, it's this. And the person who lives in Zimbabwe says it's this.
If I'm not mistaken, according to the Google and also historians and academics,
which mean nothing.
Well, sure, but
in respect of
yes.
Like, okay. Let me say that it's not that it means nothing. It's that we can't rely. Here's what we can rely on: human experience when it comes to consciousness and existence. So we can't make the argument that, like, because other smarter people have established something, it means something to my own ability to know truth. Truth. Not factual accuracy, but truth. But go ahead, what were we going to say? Academics and...
Yeah, so majority of the people on Earth and in the history of civilization have always believed in monotheistic view to this creationism.
Not always.
No. I mean, when you yeah, I mean...
Look at Hinduism.
But Hinduism, like, okay, so then we get into the territory of, again, the age of Earth and, like, whose civilization is the oldest and, like...
You just made a very broad statement. You said that it's always been the belief of monotheism, and it's like, no, there's
arguably,
polytheists.
arguably, you have to think about, okay, let's get into a little bit of the topic of, like, which civilization is arguably the oldest known to mankind, okay? That's
civilization, or
that's a very subject topic, and it's like, it's convoluted, and it's like, the further you go in history, you know, the accuracy becomes...
But okay, let's pick a civilization. Why does that have any impact on it?
You said about the Hinduism and how Hinduism, you know, those people...
But how does any of this have any bearing on your point?
What I'm saying is, general standpoint of most collective known, at least in the realm of modern civilization, they've have, monotheistic view have been more, monotheistic view, historically speaking, have predated before the, like the pantheism view, which is pantheism, also Hinduism also included in that realm, right? That the nature itself is God, and like the, we're all gods and that type of ask, and the Buddhism, Taoism, the Confucianism and all this, these are not, in terms of even ancient recordings, like you can see that those ideas, they don't predate Christ era.
I disagree. I think there's plenty of evidence that suggests they're a lot older than what you might believe it to be, and that those civilizations have been around far longer than anything that's on Earth now.
Spiritualism, in a sense, sure, when you don't necessarily put the box in the entirety of a person's belief system, like sure, we can say that, but what I'm saying is, monotheistic view in general speaking, because outside of monotheism, you can really see things can get very messy and heavy very quickly.
Well, the issue too with the idea of monotheism.
Monotheism meaning that, one God, one
no,
singular God.
I get it. I'm just saying.
So the worldview essentially used, like, for the majority of the civilization was monotheistic and polytheistic. Polytheistic is many gods.
But why can't there be both? Why can't it be both? And what I mean by that
both
is
can exist.
They absolutely can exist.
You can't have simultaneous kings in one nation and they all live peacefully.
It can exist depending on what perspective you're seeing it from. It's not this or that. It is this and that. What I mean by that is, from your definition, I'm monotheistic. I believe in one consciousness that's a master consciousness. And I'm not saying I believe, but from your perspective, I believe in a master consciousness that has begotten all of existence. Okay, great. But through that existence, God also maybe made gods.
There are realms that we see eye to eye, yes.
What I'm saying is, God may have made gods and said, go and create. And your God may be one of those gods. You'd have no idea.
But by definition, biblical God is a monotheistic, and he stands alone. There are no other gods that...
Maybe no other gods that created Earth. Maybe no other gods that created this universe. But there could be other gods that exist outside of this universe that are creating other universes. You don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
See, when we get to that realm, though, we'll go in circular of like, I don't know. I mean,
you don't know either, though. You only know because of your guideline, like your guidebook, which is I respect. I don't disagree, and I don't judge anyone for choosing those perspectives. Like,
but
I understand that everyone's having an experience.
The logic of infinite gods, or let's say polytheistic, infinity of polytheism to multiple different gods of different universes to all this. If it keeps going and going, then Then
what?
Then exactly. Then what?
I'm asking you. What's the problem with that? Why wouldn't that be okay? Why couldn't that possibly be a thing that's real? Why would you go, well, it's not possible for there to be an infinite amount of gods? I don't think that there is, but it's possible. You can't prove that it's not. You can't. Like, none of us can. Like, it's just something that's outside of our own perspective to even comprehend and understand. And what would you define as God? That's the other thing. Because depending on how you view it.
I'm trying to really think from your perspective right now.
And that's the other challenge too. It's like, I don't really have a set of belief systems that I believe in. It's more of a large amount of considerations. And
you take a little bit of good from everything. I can see that. Yeah.
Well, I think that just naturally happens through your own course of evolution. You look over here and you go, no, Christianity talked about this. I'm going to delve into this for a while. And you go, what if applies to this and that?
What if, again, there was let's say there is an absolute truth, and there is no blemish to this, but it's like, in the realm of Christianity, many people who presented as Christians or Christian figures, like pastors or ministers or whatever, whatever title, they messed up. They're people full. They're insignificant people, all of us, essentially,
priests
right?
and pastors, or
they're all flawed people, and they're all sinful people, and many times they represent the true Christianity in a wrong way. And so when the world observes that, and they, without even them actually going into the Christian realm to really dive in, like the way how someone like me is diving in the world perspective, right?
Sure.
Because I came out of a theistic view to go in and observe.
Yeah, so you're saying people observe these flawed people as
the world
Christianity.
People, what I'm saying is world people don't necessarily come into the theistic realm to really get into the nitty-gritty of the biblical studies, and they don't even consider that though. So for me, my challenge to worldly people is that, well, why don't you come into our arena while someone like me go to your arena? Let's exchange platforms for a little bit, and let's exchange.
I mean, I personally, I lived in that arena for the first 28 years of my life. Like I lived in that arena.
Like I'm curious how far you really got into the, like I'm wondering if you got to that level of the way how some of my folks and my friends, when we sit down, we talk and just have discussions, like if certain things that are
But I don't think there's a
similar.
passage in the Bible that, how do I say this? When at the end of it, like my friend said, but at the end of it, he's not your king. So the determination of where I need to be with this information is already created for me. I can't have my own interpretation. I can't decide what it means to me. If I'm not in alignment with the core belief, then I didn't get out of the book what I was supposed to. So the answer is already there for me. It's my job to follow the path to get to the answer. What other worldly thing exists in that way?
But God.
No, but what I'm saying is, from a point of view, you're saying get into my Bible, like come into my world. How far did you get? I don't think I need to go any further because I know what the answer has to be. Any scientific experiment, we don't know how the outcome's going to be. We let the outcome present itself to me. If a scientist goes into a scientific study and predetermines the outcome and then tries to make the data fit toward the outcome, that's a criminal activity. Like if someone was doing that with like vaccine trials, which that's kind of probably what happened, trying to make that data fit into that subsect, that's not real science. They're going, no, you're trying to make the information work to an outcome. And that's what the Bible does. It tells you this is where it's going to have to be. And if at the end I read the Bible and I go, I don't believe that. Well, you didn't get into the Bible good enough, or you're not following it properly, or you just don't understand. It's like, no, I do, but the outcome has to be the same. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And if I don't come to that determination.
What is it exactly about that? Like, is it the restriction type of feeling that your spirit doesn't settle well with?
No.
What is it that, like, having a one particular view, the pathway to the absolute truth, why is that so unsettling for you?
No, it's not that it's unsettling. It doesn't register. The point, it's not that it's restricting me because I want to be free and do my own thing. It's that it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. The only way it makes sense is through the Christian perspective. And that I've had that perspective. I know what that is. And like I said, I tend to believe Jesus was something bigger and something more powerful than what Christians believe him to be. If he really did do those things, and he did come through all of that spiritual knowledge and philosophical learning that supposedly he did between ages 12 and 33 in like India and in the East, where he learned from gurus and shamans, he may have been the incarnation of an energy and soul that learned how to be the totality of higher consciousness in human form, and then showed us the path to how to start that. That's a possibility. But to just blanketly believe that someone died for my sins so that I can get heaven, something I can't prove, have to have faith in that to begin with too. Had to believe that that exists first. That's challenging. That restricts you. It already says we know how the end is. Get yourself there. And you go, well, there's only one end. There's only one way to believe. There's only one thing I have to have faith and believe in. That's weird to me. That doesn't line up with how humans function.
All the intricate pathways of the worldly perspective, I'm talking about scientifics to metaphysical, or sorry, not metaphysical, but like different physical pathway, or the belief system. At the end of the day, like, if the road leads to eternal realm, which I believe essentially like
you're in an eternal realm already. There's no eternal realm. Okay, you're not going to an eternal realm. From the perspective I'm saying is you're already in it. You're already there. You'll never leave it. Your idea is that there's this and there's that. And this time period is designed to provide you with the opportunity to get to that or to go to there. I don't see that. I think all these things are one thing, in one spot, in one place, now. And you as an interdimensional consciousness limit your ability to perceive aspects of reality in order to gain an experience. So as human, in this lower physical supposed dimension, you put yourself in a place where you lose access to all the higher consciousness that you actually have as an interdimensional soul.
Ken, I'm curious. Will you be intrigued of the idea perhaps you will actually debate this with other people?
I don't want to debate. I'm never interested in debating.
Or not debate, maybe just have a conversation.
A discussion.
Sure.
I can always have discussion, but
I know the debate word is a little harsh.
Yeah,
it feels like a little
if I get into a conversation where someone's trying to tell me I'm wrong, I'm not interested, because I will never tell anyone that you're wrong. I don't think that you're wrong, because I don't believe in wrong and right in that way. I believe that all humans and all of humanity and every single entity that's existing right now on this planet and throughout this realm is having their own experience, and that is the purpose of their experience, is to create purpose in their experience.
Can I classify you in a...
if we're debating whose experience is correct, it's like, this is useless to me and should be useless to most people. But
Ken, you're one of the... Actually, you are probably one of the most unique people that I've ever came in contact in terms of exchanging ideas and getting to know as a person as well. And but
thanks.
But I can't put you in a box of some kind. And I try to describe you actually to my dad and some other theist friends, and I said many good things about you, obviously, and that we're gonna record one day, and now they get to see it. But I think you have a very, I think we share a bit similar characteristics, or like a essence of a soul, maybe. I don't even know if I want to put it that way. But we're both a sincere truth seeker.
Yeah.
And I really do see that.
I think that resonates the most with me.
Yeah.
With you. And when I first met you, and we started having these talks and stuff, I knew exactly where you were coming from. And when did you have your awakening? When did you sort of majorly shift into wanting that thirst and that desire and that?
When I turned 30, when the COVID happened, leading to that, I lost 7 people that are close to my heart.
Yeah.
And then I turned 30, and then the world shut down, and then my church had a major split.
So in that regard, it's been about 4 years you've been in the thick of it.
Very much.
When I was in it, my 3rd and 4th year, a lot of the things you're going through, I immediately go, I know right where Paul is. And I don't mean that in a way where, I'm so far ahead of you.
No,
that's not what I'm saying.
No offense taken.
It's just time. It's it would be like my dad, and I go to him about marriage problems or something. I'm a married guy, but Dad, what do I do? And he's like,
Ken, you are 10 years older than me.
No,
so
for sure.
I respect you in
but
that sense of big brother.
I really want to get this across, because I think a lot of people have this perspective that they are more advanced or more evolved because you don't know where I am. I'm spiritually enlightened. No, it's none of that.
Yeah.
With time comes more experience, and with time can come, not necessarily, more personal evolution within the paradigm of being spiritually aware. And so I've had 15 years of going through this. My Aunt Nancy woke up in the 60s, or 70s, and so she's been at it for 30, 40, 50 plus years. And when I saw you going through that, I knew immediately where you were, and I respected it. And one of the things I noticed too was I thought, man, for where he is, in some ways, you've done some unique things that I didn't do during my 3rd year or 4th year, So I can't imagine what you'd be like in your 15th year, just being floating on cloud 9, eyes all lit up and got a weird halo around your head.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we're coming to an end here, but I very much appreciate it. And the fact that we can verbally spar, and then we can still come together as a friend, as a younger brother, older brother, and yet we can still connect in terms of human levels. It doesn't always have to be about religious context, right?
Yeah.
But we can again, like I said, we can still open up a can of beer, drink, cheers, you know, and life
Yeah,
goes
and
on.
I appreciate the term spar, you know, because I know what that means, but I honestly don't consider it, like, I never feel threatened. I never feel like I've got to get something across to you and tell you what's going on, because in my view, from what I've learned, everyone is having their own experience, and it's necessary. And you know it's necessary because it exists. And I think even before we get done today, if you want, I can kind of go through the general idea of how I think everything works. Because I think once you hear that, I think so.
It's 5:55.
Yeah, I'll try to run through it fast. A general idea of how I think everything works could help illustrate why I have the considerations I do, and I have the probability, you know, paradigm that I do. And then how I think it all operates within the context of that. And so starting off with what I told you earlier, you know, there's an omniscient consciousness that exists. We'll call it God just to make it simple. God exists. He knows everything that will ever be, that ever could be, that will be. He's omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's all. He's the all that is the all. But God doesn't know what it's like to not be God. And so it splits itself into two, instantly creating relativity. It remains on this side as its omniscient present consciousness, and here births an infinite amount of space, time, atoms, and that level of consciousness to exist.
Most people will not even understand that concept right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's challenging, but I think most people can get it.
A lot of theists will have a hard time with that, but yeah.
Maybe. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are like, wait, back the train up, but I think that has to do with belief systems. Like unconsciously, your beliefs put up walls, and you can't allow yourself to see things sometimes. And I only know that because I know it in me. I'm not telling other people, oh, you have belief systems to block you. It's like, I had belief systems that blocked me, and I had to learn to put my walls down. And then when I look back, I was like, oh, it was the wall that was in the way. And then when you talk to someone with a wall, you see the wall, and you go, I don't know, Paul, 6,000 years, there's a wall here. I don't know, we can have a conversation, you know.
We're talking about the ice wall?
And that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. So splits itself into two, creates this perceived physical space. And again, none of this is factually accurate. I'm not saying that this is how it is, but what I am saying is it's a concept and idea that can help facilitate sort of information that you can integrate into your paradigm. And so births this entire realm of existence, and then breathes life into it and becomes all of the atoms. And it's experiencing the laws of physics, and is then experiencing galaxies forming and solar systems and all of that. And then eventually those planets create water, and then trees and life. But the whole time, this entity, this master consciousness, is experiencing all of that energy, all of that experience within this place as the level of consciousness of whatever that physical thing is. So an atom in this idea would have less consciousness than a dog. Because if you place all the atoms together, now it's an outlet, turns into a dog. Now it's an outlet for more consciousness. Consciousness is God. God can experience itself less in an atom, but more in a human. And so the evolution continues on. Let's see what humanity does with itself to see how far I can experience myself as humanity. But while it's humanity, there's a long period of time where it doesn't recognize it's actually God. And the power of waking up to that as an individual or even a collective society, that, oh my gosh, God's not out there, God's in here. Wait, are we the incarnation of God? Are we actually that consciousness learning how to love itself? That's a powerful thing. Because if you knew every single person you were talking to was yourself and was God, how does that change your interactions? And how does the idea that you'll never die, you'll always exist, you're eternal, there's nothing to fear, there's no place you're going to go that's bad or good, it will always be love. Now what does your world look like? How do you start to interact with people differently?
Then you can't justify crimes and
you absolutely can.
and
Absolutely. It's all creation of God. It's all a creation that's designed to facilitate an experience within humanity in order to learn, evolve, and grow. That's all it is. That's it. And we hate that idea because we go, but it's such a terrible experience. The devil must have created it.
Don't you feel like this is a regurgitating hamster wheel of a thought then?
That's a pretty reductive thing to say. A regurgitating hamster wheel? What I just, the stuff I just said?
No. I'm sorry. I don't mean it. I really don't mean to disrespect that or in any way. But I'm saying what you just described about reality. You know, it doesn't. For me, everything is all good, and we're gonna,
Do you need
just
the
be part
Do you
of,
need the evil? Do you need the bad? Do you need
good
it to?
Can exist without evil.
Yes, and that's what I just said. Good is not well.
But
Good and evil.
Evil,
good can't exist without evil, and evil can't exist without good. But
that topic is an excellent topic.
No.
In
the paradigm that I'm saying, your use of good is different. Good and evil only exist together. Unconditional love, gratitude, the actual thing that God is, that vibration, that energy of creation, exists as an umbrella to good and evil. Good isn't as good as it gets. The absolute good is nowhere near absolute love and truth. Good and evil is a scale of how humanity chooses to act within the confines of this perceived physical universe. God-level love is something different than good and evil.
If I'm being honest.
In that perspective.
I am not quite there in terms of having that perspective with you, if I'm being frankly honest with you. And this is why we're going to have a second meeting one day.
Yeah.
And we will continue on with this journey. But I want to ask you one last thing.
Yeah.
As I would like to... I'm hoping that in your eyes that I'm not just your hard-head theistic, like shelter, but someone who's really willingly going out to the world and like just like when I say world, outside of Christian view, okay, and I'm really trying to study every worldview that there is, and because I am a truth seeker, and this is all I care about. Like I care about making money, I care about my own perception of what people think about me, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna they can't do anything about my life in terms of if I continue to exist or if I die or whatever. You know what I mean?
Do you have a lot of input on what other people think of you? Let me say that again. Do you feel that what people think of you carries weight within your own personal experience?
I mean, to a degree, I think everybody.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I mean, everybody's got some level of well, I can't take my pants off at Starbucks, and I want to be comfortable, but I don't want people thinking I'm a weirdo. So yes, to some level, on some level, everyone has that.
I don't know.
But I mean, you and how you build your own self-image and how you see yourself as you. Do you use your friends, and not necessarily friends, but just in general people, or the idea of people? Does that impact who you are?
I mean, I suppose like when I was younger, I cared about what people thought about me,
What about now?
But now, I mean, honestly, I'm being as honest as I am, like in front of camera, and I'm trying to do all this recording stuff because internally I've been battling this my whole entire life, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, arguably you have too. And it's just that I think this is a fascinating idea that I'm essentially putting my life in public. I'm willing to volunteer and say, I'm the guinea pig here. I'm gonna put my, life, and so by me doing this, I think it tells you that I don't really care what people think about me. I think I've come to that level where I'm willing to be transparent.
Yeah.
I'm willing to talk about the hard topics, not a lot of the Christian folks are not willing to talk about. There are lots of topics in this world that I think a lot of Christian people are very conservative or sorry, not conservative, but very reserved and they're
It all comes down to belief system. Like the belief system creates a certain type of person.
Yes, but I want to ask you this. So as much as I am willing to explore outside of this so-called infinity realm or whatever, spiritual realm, I would also, and I know you're going to say you've been there, but I want to also challenge you in a way that I think some of the, and this is me very respectful way, just like you're your elder,
Sure.
not just in that sense, but I feel like I come from a quite different theistic background than your average theistic background. I really do, and
Sure.
I hope you can see that in my future videos as well. But I want to see if we are both willing to go the opposite way and try to maybe perhaps, because I'm interested in where you are and where all the places that you've been to, and you really intrigue me, Ken. Like out of so many other people that I know, like, you know, I really
I
find
appreciate
it very
that.
fascinating.
I do.
So I'm willing to go that direction, but and I'm hoping that you could potentially come into my house a little bit. I mean, which I know you have been growing up, I know. But again, even within the Christian realm, there are many layers, and
Yeah, and
they're depth, like incredible amount of like.
You're a pretty educated
differences.
guy within Christianity, and I
Yes.
feel like when I speak with you, I get to kind of dip my toe or get knee high into that world and listen, because I respect you. I respect your perspectives. I think you're a very smart guy, and what I respect the most about you is the desire to expand and open and search for more knowledge. That is something that I gravitate toward in relationships. That being said, to go back to the Bible, to go back to Christianity, to go back through it again on my own, within who I am, I immediately, intrinsically inside feels that is an operation that no longer serves my soul. That's not to say that I won't listen to others express their versions or their experiences of it, but I've gone through the Bible, read the Gospels, read Revelation, went on to the Apocrypha, went through the book of Enoch. You read it all.
But can I tell you,
And-
even within that, did you know that even the people who study theology and doctrines,
Yeah.
even they themselves can be blinded to the truth of who Christ is?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think everyone has the ability to be blind, even those who believe. And I think the compass that I have developed within myself is to know myself more deeply, which coincides with the idea of what I also think that this place is for God to know itself more deeply, and a very generic way of saying it. And so that's what kind of is my guide. I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in anything. I tend to consider strongly and live in a world of probabilities, and only believe in the things that I know I can prove to myself deeply within. And one of those things that has come through that exploration has been knowing that there is a master, all-knowing, all-loving consciousness that exists, because I've felt it, I've experienced it, I've listened to it. That's something I can prove to myself. Now, the depth of what that means, the capacity of factual information around what that looks like, I'm not claiming any of that. I know the amount I can experience now. I knew what it was year 4, and now year 15, it's tenfold. So as I followed that path, once I got on it and that capacity grew and more light started coming in, I went, there's something about this path that is right. Out of all the other paths others have told me about, none of them led me to this amount of goodness, peace, love, self-change, and self-evolution that is in alignment with absolute and unconditional love. This is something I need to follow. And now I won't go down any paths that restrict myself from exploring the totality of that capacity.
Okay, no, that's fair enough, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like I said, like we talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
say, Kenny, read this book. What do you think about this? Yeah, sure, I'll read it.
yeah.
But again, the Bible was written by man. My experiences come from within. And Jesus talked about it. God is within. All the teachers talk about it. All the answers to the universe are within you. They're not out here. When you start looking out here, you're looking in the wrong direction. You know? And I've come into the truthful nature of that I have sought, and I have sought answers and found questions and found keys that open doors beyond all understanding within myself by going inward. If anyone tells you where God is and points and says this is the way to God, thank them and know for sure they don't know the way. But anyone that says go within, that turns you back into yourself, all the answers are within you, find it. That at least is giving you the opportunity to know your own truth. And that to me is far more in alignment with absolute truth than the other.
Do you know the TV show Spartacus?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while.
At the very end, Spartacus and Julius, they meet, and the Caesar, I think it's Caesar or someone, the emperor of the Rome, or one of the military charge guy, right?
Yeah, sure.
They meet and they said, you know, they shake hands, and they say, you know, maybe perhaps in another life we'll be brothers, but not in this life.
Sure.
And I feel like in that sense of the way how I believe in God, like, you know, monotheistic way versus the way how you describe it, I think perhaps this will be the biggest distinguishing thing that's about you and me, and perhaps that's where the line gets drawn. But regardless, I'm still very pleased.
And there's no line for, like, I have no line. I have no line. There is no line. It's like you know, if you were to pour oil into water, you know, they mix and they kind of surround each other, and like there's separation there. But I don't know, I don't see it as a line, because from my perspective, what you're going through is valuable to God. Again, I don't like that word, but master consciousness, God, needs Paul's experience in order to be whole. How do I know that? Because Paul's experience exists. So I don't devalue any of your perspectives. I actually honor them and respect them. Mm-hmm. And even if they're not in alignment with my perspectives, I know that you're necessary. Why? Because you're here. Otherwise you wouldn't exist. The only thing that gets produced in this universe are things that are needed. And everything that exists is purposeful.
We have to wrap up because of the break time, but let's continue this on.
Is there any other one question you've got that you didn't get to that you're like, I wish you would have gotten to that? I'll be quick with it.
There's too many.
Just pick one. Pick one. There's so many. I think next time we need to stay off religion, though, because I think the Christian thing.
Well, but you know, to be fair, Ken, that's gonna get brought up in just about.
No, 100%. I just mean I feel like there's more of a conversational aspect around dialogues and stuff when it's just things we both don't know. Like if you're like, so, you know, what is there purpose to life? And so you kind of go, yeah, well, I think purpose is driven from this and blah, 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 that. And, you know, I think we make our own purpose. And there's philosophical things, but when we get into belief systems, it's hard, because then it becomes, well, what about this? What about that? And, you know, I don't know. I know what I'm trying to say, but my head's kind of cooked. Yeah. But anyway, one last question. What do you got? Make it a quick one. Don't make it be like,
these are not quick ones, Ken. None of these are quick ones.
As long as I'm there by like 7, we're good. But I prefer to be there earlier. Yeah, just pick one and I'll tell you.
We're gonna have to, because we have to break it down.
Just pick one and I'll go yes or no.
Well, I have one in my head.
Just give me one, like, and I'll go, it's too much. I can't answer that one. It's too much.
Are you willing to, or would you be willing to explore more deeper in the realm of, like my realm of the monotheistic realm?
Like Christianity and things like that? Yeah. It's not that I'm unwilling. It feels on a soulful level that I've completed that chapter of my life.
But what if is the amount of what you scoped out to be in that realm of Christianity, what if you didn't actually go all the way in it?
I think I could go all the way and I would still have the same perspective. I don't think there's anything in the Bible that I haven't read where I would go, oh, I completely was wrong about this. Because the Bible says everything that I'm saying isn't correct. So much of what I'm saying is not accurate. So much of what I've discovered through meditation, through higher conscious connection, and through the expansion of my own consciousness, which led me to know, wow, there's something beautiful that has birthed this into existence. All of that all of that contribution to my own self.
Bible is not just a regular man-written book.
No, but what I'm saying,
it is ultimately man-written, but it's inspired by what we say that the deity himself inspired.
You believe
through
that.
God.
You believe that. That's a belief. That's not.
But Ken, everything that you also
but what I'm saying,
said
right.
is a realm of belief as well.
Right. So you and I, to that extent,
Mm-hmm.
you have your belief. I have mine.
Mm-hmm.
You claim yours is right. I don't claim yours is wrong. But they're the exact same thing. That's what I meant by there's all these different realities that exist. You live in a completely different reality in that context. You believe you're right. I don't believe I'm right. And there's a difference between us. And that's hard. You see what I'm saying? I don't believe that I'm right. You believe you're right.
I mean, I like to think that I'm right.
Yeah.
Again, this is not me coming from arrogance. I'm not swinging a hammer here and be like, all people in the world needs to believe in God, the Bible, or you go to, no way. Like, I'm not doing that, right?
But
again,
if you don't believe in Jesus, though, if you don't believe in Jesus as your King, your Lord and Savior, you do not get into heaven.
But then the thing is, in order for us to sit right now and then go through that whole chapter of explaining who Christ actually is, but not in a sense of what the people interpret him to be.
At the very end of it.
This is not a simple thing, though, Kenny.
So you don't have to. Okay, I'm just understanding from a Christian perspective, though. You can get into heaven without believing in Jesus as your Lord and Savior.
No, you cannot.
Right, you can't. So
yes.
There it is. Just like my friend said the other day.
I know.
At the end of it, Jesus isn't your king.
I know. And Ken,
so there's a belief system.
And I get that. And I know. And I fully understand how closed off that is. For someone like you to hear, or someone else to accept that kind of like a one path and only one path leading to the absolute truth. And I like to honestly learn more about why their perspective doesn't quite understand that, or like, you know,
I have an intuitive feeling. I have an intuitive feeling based upon your search and your desire for knowledge and truth that you will come in contact with that in the next 5 years in a strong and powerful way. That's what I feel from you on a psychic level. I think that's.
Do you think which direction do you think I'll? Do you think I'll
I don't
still
want
be
to say
monotheistic?
that. I don't want to say that because I don't think that helps anything. I don't think that helps your journey or my journey or anyone's journey. But I know that if you continue to go down the path with the earnest excitement and pressure that you have with going no holds bar, I'm going to find out, you're going to come into a circle and you're going to get back to the beginning and you're going to go, I've been here.
I've been coming in a circle all the time. Like that's what I was saying.
No, everything's circular, but here, I guess I mean like this. You're going to do this. All these circles are going to come back to a master circle. And you're going to realize you may stumble upon some information that you can't explore, because if you explore this, it means you're not exploring that. You're going to come to a paradigm that is black and white, that you cannot live in both and you'll have to choose. And by choosing one...
Next time I'd like to talk about the duality, get a little bit more into some of even the dangerous realm, what the theists will call it, the heretic realm of the esoteric teachings, and those are heavy stuff.
People use that word esoteric and occult, and they're not bad words. And oh my gosh, I'm sure there's plenty of people right now going, oh, they're such bad words. They're not. Occult is the English word that's derived from occultus, which is a Latin word for hidden or unknown. And esoteric means information that is known only by a small group of people, whereas exoteric is known by the masses. So what we're talking about, occult and esoteric, is information that is limited and hidden and only known by a few people or a smaller group of consciousness.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
But nonetheless, these terminologies triggers, I would say, a lot of different people.
They do.
And it
for me, when I first woke up, I got some pretty profound messages that made me seek some stuff. And when I found it, I was like, this is horrifying. This is so scary. This is anti-Christian. And later on, I found out, no, certain colors aren't anti-Christian and certain shapes aren't anti-Christian. It's just your perspective and fear and your belief structure has made you see this reality in such a way that it causes you to have a fearful reaction.
I like to also touch upon different figures such as Eckhart Tolle to
I wouldn't really want to talk about
Anka to even Billy Carson. I would like to go into that. I'm willing to go into that realm.
Yeah.
But I'm also willing to bring other figures such as William Lane Craig, Dr. Norman Geisler, Frank Turek, what's his name? John Lennox, those
I'm not familiar with
intellectual people from the other side.
Discussion's discussion, and I think that going back to what you said, we'll leave it at this because I know we got to go. Would I be willing to explore it? I've explored for myself and my soul and what I know, the amount of information from that paradigm, enough to know I had to move to the next level, and to move to the next level, I had to give some things up. And I couldn't reconcile both. If I held on to this, I could not start exploring.
That's exactly what I was saying to you earlier.
If you hold on to this,
everything.
if you don't hold on to this, or if you hold on to this, you can explore this. So I had a choice, and I was like, this exploration is more important. I'm going to have to put this down to move through this door. And when I did, it was the most beautiful and powerful decision that I made. And it's only led to absolutely positive and incredible things in my spiritual journey. And that's not right for everybody. Yeah. And there is no right for everybody. Like, my journey's my journey, your journey's your journey. And that's why I respect anyone that's religious or not religious or scientific or atheist. I'm witnessing a perspective of God, and I'm curious to know what this perspective is and to know it more deeply and to be present with it. Because I don't know that I'm right or wrong. I just know what I can observe. And that becomes almost my own religion, so to speak.
Ryan said I talk too much, but I think I found someone who can talk more than me.
Well, this wasn't even it, man. This was like me turned down.
This is great, Ken. This is awesome. I just want to, again, we have to, because we're going to get to the
we got to go.
airport.
I got to get to the airport.
Hey, one last handshake?
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I want to do it again for sure.
Yeah. We touched up on so many great things, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think we'll do more in the future and figure out the right path and everything else. And this is just the first time, and I think the second and third and fourth will be easier. And also next time I really want to get into like the philosophy of it all, because right now it's a lot. We've talked a lot about the foundations of how it works, and this can't work that way, and there's a lot of back and forth instead of just going, let's just discuss the philosophy. Let's discuss the ideology from a how it works in your life perspective, because I think that's really valuable. So
okay.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I did.